Good evening, everyone. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. It is, however, not being broadcast this evening due to technical difficulties, but it will be available on the YouTube channel tomorrow. And this meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. All town facilities are currently closed to the public with the exception of 10 to 2 Monday through Thursday. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website in the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, also allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment, both at the beginning, end, and during the public hearings of this meeting. For this meeting, the Planning Board is convening by Zoom video conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Using a smartphone, tablet, or computer, you can go to zoom.us and enter the meeting ID number, or you can call 888-475-4499 and enter the meeting ID number. The meeting ID number for this meeting is 874-017-16921. Again, 874-017-16921. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that to take care to not screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I will turn that over to the chair now. Tanner, you there?
Tanner still shows as muted.
Yeah, he does, and I've asked him to unmute, and he's, I don't know if he might not, oh, he just unmuted.
I'm good.
There he is. Excellent. So we have already had our roll call vote. Thank you, Adam. Brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment not related to the public hearings that we have going on tonight? I don't see any hands. Is there any board comment? Okay, then we'll get right into it. We have 2 A&R plans tonight. The first one's for 237 Prospect Street. And do we have a representative?
I don't see anybody here. I don't see anybody's hand raised.
I guess we don't necessarily need a representative, do we?
We do not.
Okay. So just to get it started, I guess we have a letter from the building department. They have clearly marked the not a building lot, and I guess it's basically taken one beachfront property and split it into 2. What it looks like.
That's correct. I think one is to be deeded with the property across the street, which you can see the bottom of here, where they recently built a new home. And I think the intent is to provide those folks access to the lake.
Sure. So to discuss something for a future agenda item tonight, the A&R process. This is okay with everything you know about, Adam?
It is. They have frontage. They've clearly marked it as not a buildable lot. It's not a buildable lot. It does allow them to divide and convey land in that manner.
All right. Well, is there anyone on the board who has a comment or question? Okay. I guess then, if that's the case, then I would accept a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the A&R for 237 Prospect Street.
Excellent.
I'll second.
That was Tanner.
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll have to do roll call. All in favor? Tanner Cole,
Aye.
Paula Bertram,
Aye.
Matthew Brenner,
Aye.
Eric Torgerson,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Excellent. On to our second A&R.
Can I ask a question? This is Tim Boschman. I don't know why that's not on. I'm the owner of that parcel.
Oh, okay. Well, you've already gotten your A&R granted, but
No.
you certainly can have some input.
I got the approval, but I need your signatures. That parcel, one of those parcels is going with the new house that was built across the street. And the bank insists that they convey together because their appraisal included the waterfront piece. I've got a family that's waiting to move in. They've currently moved out of their house and they're renting. So I thought that, I didn't know this was going to be Zoom, so I had initially scheduled the closing for tomorrow. But I have to wait until I get at least 3 signatures on the plan so I can get it recorded. So my request is, can I get, can any of the members make it down there tomorrow to sign this original?
Well, I certainly can myself, but I can't speak for anyone else.
Okay.
What time does the office open?
We get there at 8,
Okay. And you're there until,
6.
okay, Tim, when do you need the plan?
If I can get it, well, if I was originally thinking if I can record the plan in the morning of any given day, I can close that afternoon. So if you can sign it anytime tomorrow, I can record Wednesday morning and we could close Wednesday afternoon.
Okay. I could do it after 4.
Okay. That's awesome.
I could be down tomorrow morning.
Okay. I understand I need 3 of 5. That's all I need, right?
Well,
That's
it's always
correct.
better to have more than you need in my
Yeah.
experience with this stuff.
Yes. If I had 3 in the morning, I could close in the afternoon. So how many members do we have today?
All 5.
5 are here.
They're all there. Okay. Okay.
Tanner
Is
and
anyone-
Eric, are you available?
I will be out of town tomorrow morning, but I could be back in the afternoon. So depending on availability, I could be in there 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that.
Okay.
So the
All right.
registry, yeah. What time does the registry close? It's in Fitchburg, right?
It's in Fitchburg. I have to bring it and drop it off. I don't know. I'll have to check.
I think it's 4:30, but
Yeah,
So
chances are I'll be bringing it down the following morning
okay.
when they open.
I assume Adam has a contact for you. So as soon as you get 3 signatures, he can call you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Adam? Yeah.
Yes, we have
You
that
have my
contact
cell phone,
information.
Adam?
I don't know if I have your cell phone. If it's on the application, I do.
Should be, but I can give it to you.
0169,
Yes.
then yes, I have your cell phone.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to the A&R for 422 Mulpin Road. And do we have anybody for that? I see Mr. Marsden is the presenter. I thought I saw him earlier.
He is here.
Okay.
Goldie's here as well. I'm present, and Mr. Marsden's going to represent me.
Excellent. I can just barely hear Dawn.
Say that again, Donnie. I'm present and Mr. Marsden's going to represent me.
Oh, I can hear you both, but you're both fairly faint. Probably nothing we can do about it.
We're outside on a picnic table, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So what would you like to tell us about this?
It's pretty self-explanatory. We went through, the testing has all been done for the existing home and the 4 new lots. And the building inspectors reviewed it. He found one discrepancy on the offset to a shed. So we made the amendment that he requested to provide the 25-foot offset, side yard offset to that shed. Pretty much it's self-explanatory, just 4 frontage lots.
Okay, so does the plan that we have in front of us represent that amendment?
Yes, it should. That I provided Marjorie with corrected copies on Thursday.
Yep, and if this plan says revised 9/9.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Very good. All right, it does seem fairly straightforward. It's another beautiful piece of farmland that we're losing. Unfortunate, but we can't afford to buy it all.
No, taxes are a wonderful thing.
Okay, so does anybody on the board have any comments or concerns or questions? All right, well, hearing none, then I guess I'd take a motion for this A&R. Anybody?
I'll make a motion that we approve the A&R for 422 Mulpus Road.
Second.
Okay, Paula seconds. Excellent. Any further discussion? Okay, a roll call. All in favor? Dana Cole,
Aye.
Paula Bertram,
Aye.
Matthew Brenner,
All right.
Eric Torgerson,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have a public hearing for a common driveway and a scenic road for Northfield. This is continuation, I believe, is it not? Or did they
It
rescind?
is.
So I don't have to read the
That's
thing?
correct. That's correct.
Very good. What would you like to tell us? Is it Mr. McSweeney?
Yeah, are you on, Ed? Ed, you there?
He's on a phone that's muted. Oh,
Hello?
There you go.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
Okay. This is Ed McSweeney, continuing the Northfield Road, the request for a shared driveway on lot 1 and 5, and for a single driveway on lot A, pertaining to A&R lots. We had provided last week Adam with a copy of a plan that Zoc, I believe, we've included everything that was requested at the last meeting, hopefully everything. And yeah, if you're looking at the plan, I'll start with Lot A, where the proposed driveway is. There is in the break in the wall, there is an actual 14-foot opening, and we hope to use that. We know the driveway will be 15 feet going through there. So there will be minimal disturbance of a few rocks that are there. And to the right of that, going to the property line, there is a total of 49 feet. And if we're allowed to install the driveway there, we're prepared to basically, there's several broken trees and limbs. We'll remove the trees and limbs. And the wall in some of the areas are basically no stones, all the ways up to a few stones, but we plan on rebuilding that, so the stone wall be intact then for that 49 feet, and that goes over to the property line. Now going to the right of where the mark is on the property line, we're proposing a shared driveway. Where the driveway will be, will come 5 feet off that line to the right of the property, and install a shared driveway. And on the plan there, we have placed measurements of how far we're off the property line, etc. Any questions?
Okay. I will open it up to the board.
I have a question on the shared driveway. If I look at where the shared driveway is, and you show the 16-foot wide driveway, why is that driveway not on the other side of the property to go closer to the joint lot line? Why is the opening where it's proposed rather than being straight in line with the property line?
Because where the property line is, there's an abundance of healthy trees, plus the stone wall is 100% intact there. Where the 54-foot is, there's broken trees, and most of the stone wall is no longer there. So again, in the spirit of the scenic road, trying to find locations that the wall is either, the stone wall is either in disrepair or broken trees and so forth. That's why we selected that area.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So our shared driveways, typically they're supposed to split the frontage of the lots, and I think that's pretty much the only thing that this doesn't do. And I'm assuming that we're all comfortable with that because of the scenic road and the availability of a less than nice, pretty stone wall.
And the broken trees.
And yep. So, any more board comment?
I would only say that I drove by recently, and what Mr. McSweeney is describing is unsurprisingly exactly what it looks like on the site as
Yep.
well, just in terms of marking and in terms of where the stone wall exists versus where it looks like it exists on paper, but in practice, that where the driveway is marked, you wouldn't walk by and look and say, oh, there's a stone wall there right now.
Very good. So since this is a public hearing, is there any public comment? I don't see any hands raised. Does everybody have the ability to unmute themselves, Adam?
I can.
Adam's muted.
I'm the only one who can't. No. Yes, everybody can. I'm not sure what happened with they're having some Zoom issues with live streaming, so I don't know if it has something to do with the upgrade, and there's some settings that need to be reset, but everyone can mute and unmute themselves now.
Okay, very good. So I'll ask one more time for any public comment on this scenic road or shared driveway. And then I'll ask once more for any more board comment before we close this public hearing.
I guess my only comment is I am assuming that there's been soil testing worked on and septic plans prepared for these house lots, and I feel like the engineering documentation that's been provided for this application, it leaves a lot of that out. And I mean, I guess there's enough detail here that we can proceed, but I struggle with the fact that I'm pretty confident that more engineering has been done on these parcels. And
I can, if you want, I can speak to that. This is Ed McSwain. So prior to us even moving forward and submitting anything, the first step that we do is make sure that we meet the A&R requirements or whatever the requirements are. So we know we have the amount of area, we know we have the lot lines and the wetland situation. We've already had our experts go and look at it and say, yep, there are lots there. And we have filed the appropriate paperwork with the Board of Health, including paying the fees. And Jim Griffey has been out to each of those locations. And we have primary and secondary perks that have been completed and filed with the Board of Health, and they're on record. So we know exactly where the perks are going and the septic systems are going, and a lot of the work is being designed as we talk right now.
So my question remains, why isn't all that detail on this plan? Why isn't the topography shown? Why isn't the septic system shown? Why isn't the driveways? Like, there's a lot of proposed and hand-drawn stuff, but very little of it is actually engineered, in my opinion. I mean, the lot lines are engineered, but everything else is hand-drawn. And I guess that's my hang-up with the application as it is, but I guess there's enough detail here that we can reasonably expect that, you know, there's a 5-foot offset to the property line and so on. It just, I don't know. I feel like given the situation and given the amount of work that's been done, as the applicant has attested to, if we have a better plan, either here or there. So.
Okay, well, I correct me if I'm mistaken, Adam, but I believe we've already approved the A&Rs for this. And right now, our only purview is the right-of-way along the scenic road for the trees. And I guess the stone wall plays into the scenic road. I'm not quite sure.
It does.
Okay.
And I guess to answer Tanner's concerns, the board doesn't have any standards for what goes into applications of this nature, either common driveway or scenic road. So if the board, and it's something I would probably suggest, at least on the common driveway, to look at that bylaw and change it, because it seems to be some, there seems to be issues in general with the way that it's written and the way that it's applied. So it would make more sense to me to clarify that language, and at that time potentially set a series of standards for what you'd like to see in the plans that get submitted for that. But that's something to discuss in the future.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would concur with Mr. Cole's comments. I also wish we had more detail on this plan. I would like to see the actual engineered offsets rather than handwritten notes and hand-drawn lines. But I do think we have enough detail to act on this application. But I would also agree with Mr. Barney's comments that this is something we should address. Common driveways definitely seems to generate a lot of discussion by the board, and I think we need to specify what kind of plans we're looking for in regards to common driveways. And at some point, I'd also like to look at scenic roads, because I think when we're talking about things like historical stone walls and trees, I personally would like to see that kind of detail on the plan that we're approving.
I do not disagree. So I guess moving forward, before we close the public hearing, can you speak, Adam, to the what level of work is going to trigger the requirement of a stormwater permit?
At this point, there's going to be a disturbance greater than 40,000 here. There is municipal separate storm sewer in at least Northfield, if not Holman as well. So I would believe that all of this work is draining at least towards the street for the 3-4 lots that front on Holman and Northfield. So any disturbance over 1 acre would require that.
And if I can add to that, Adam, a few weeks ago, we have engaged the services of McCarthy Engineering. They've have assigned a person to it, and that's on his work schedule. And we have been bugging him to move along, and he's getting there, as he says, as fast as he can. So we have engaged the service of an engineering firm, and we agree that a permit has to be filed, and we have every intention of filing one. So we're waiting for them to hurry up and get the work done.
Excellent, excellent. I just didn't want that to surprise you later on.
No, you brought that up a couple of weeks ago. We accept that, no problem. But again, I think Adam will support this. It's not a lack of our effort. It's a lack of, right now, most of the surveying companies and engineering companies are overwhelmed with work, and we're just adding to that. And so as soon as they can get to it, we've asked them, and they've got our full approval to execute it, and that's what we're waiting for.
Super, super. All right, then I guess I would accept the motion to close the public hearing unless anybody else has anything they'd like to add.
I would make a motion to close the public hearing for Northfield Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
And that was Mr. Brenner?
Yes.
Excellent. So any further discussion on closing the public hearing? Okay, so roll call, all in favor. Tanner Cole,
Aye.
Paula Bertram,
Aye.
Matthew Brenner,
Aye.
Eric Torgerson,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Okay, so the public hearing is closed. No more deliberation, no more discussion or introduction of, how does that go, Adam?
There's no new testimony.
No new testimony, thank you. So I'm not sure what, if anything, we have to deliberate. I think we got most of it hashed out. But feel free to speak up.
I would make a motion to approve the application for a common drive and scenic road on Northfield Road. I don't know if we need a more descriptive, if we need the map and parcel, Adam, or if that's enough.
I think you can call it the land formerly attached to 300 Holman Street, and all the property information will be in the decision.
Okay, so I would amend my motion to include that description.
Okay, and then just a question on the motion, does it need to refer to the plan as submitted or anything, or is that a comment?
It's all part of the record, and we'll include it as part of what we write through the decision.
Okay. So Mrs. Bertram has made a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Excellent. Mr. Brenham seconds. So I will roll call all in favor. Mr.
Discussion on the motion, Mr. Chair?
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Just a formality.
Okay. Did you want any further input from us on this?
I mean, if it sounds like there are no conditions other than it's done according to what was submitted, so that will be reflected in the decision.
Okay, now back to the board members. Is that the case?
I don't see any additional discussion. Obviously, it's contingent upon the driveways being located as depicted on the plan that was submitted and approved. But other than that, and Adam, that will be part of the decision, correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote? Hearing nothing, I'm going to assume we are. So all in favor, Mr. Cole,
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram,
Aye.
Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McSweeney, for your patience and your diligence.
No, I appreciate it. May I say now that it has been approved, may I give some commentary to the statement of why, how come there's not more information on the plan? Is that acceptable to give my 2 cents worth?
I'm going to go ahead and say I don't see why not. Any
Aye.
information you can give to us to help improve our process, I think would help.
Well, going forward, from the builder's point of view, this is the first time I've ever had to apply for the scenic road in the town of Lunenburg. I have in other towns, and what we provided was acceptable by those towns, and they met their criteria. The reason we don't supply, at least I didn't supply, or my surveyor didn't supply, is when you look at your application forms, they're kind of general, and they more or less focus on the trees and the walls. That's how we interpret it and so forth. So I think some of the questions you have are excellent, but you might want to actually write them in the applications, and then we'll be told that we should add that more information. So that's the main reason we didn't add a lot more information, because the way and maybe it was just us looking at it and we misinterpreted it, but we didn't see a lot of this stuff actually called out in detail, as opposed to if it was, we probably would have, we would have then gone ahead and added. So that's my 2 cents worth on the application.
Okay. Very good.
I do have one other question. So on August 24th, you approved the A&R lots. And I know it's challenging because of the virus and so forth, but we're still waiting for those to get signed off so we can get the Mylar back.
They were both signed
can you give me
today,
a
Ed.
feel? Pardon me?
They were both signed today.
I'll shut up then. Good night, folks. Thank you very much for your help. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Was there someone trying to say something?
No, it was just me telling them they were just signed.
Okay. Very good. All right, then I guess we'll move on to our next item, which is 361 Massachusetts Avenue, Bright Farms. This is a public hearing that we are opening tonight. So if I can get my act together, I'll find the...
I have it right here if you want me to read it.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't have it right in front of me. So if you would, Adam, please.
The Lunenburg Planning Board will hold a public hearing on August 24th, 2020, 6:35 p.m. via Zoom video conference to hear and review a request under MGL Chapter 40, Section 15C. Oh, sorry, wrong public hearing notice.
Oh, it's in the other packet. I found it. I beat you.
Excellent.
So, the Lunenburg Planning Board will hold a public hearing on September 14, 2020, 6:35 p.m. via Zoom video conference to hear and review applications for site plan approval and stormwater management special permit under Chapter 250, Section 8.4, and Chapter 204, respectively, of the Code of the Town of Lunenburg for construction of a greenhouse for commercial production of salad greens, associated parking, and roadway at 361 Massachusetts Avenue, map 057, parcel 0031, Lunenburg, Mass. Owner is 351 Mass Ave, LLC, 133 Leominster Shirley Road, Lunenburg, Mass. Applicant is Mass MA Greenhouse, LLC, care of 1 Bridge Street, Suite 2-004, Irvington, New York. Materials are available for viewing at the planning office, 960 Massachusetts Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass. And in accordance with is all the same that Adam read at the beginning of the meeting. Do I really need to read it again?
Nope.
Okay, very good. Then I guess I'll turn this over to Mr. O'Neill.
Oh, I thought you were going to guide us through questions and issues you might have, but I'll start off by saying we've done a number of things since we last spoke to you. Some things will modify what you have before you, not in any dramatic way. So broad questions will, most of the questions you have are probably still relevant to this set of plans. We were as you guys probably know, there's a dearth of surveying capacity in Massachusetts right now. Civil engineers and surveyors are in high demand, and so we've had trouble getting some of the CAD level survey points that we needed to flesh out elements of this plan, and we're scrambling to get that done. We actually just got one of the files we needed, I think it was yesterday. So I know we're going to hear that we probably haven't given all the full detail, for example, that your external reviewer needs, and we're aware of that. And we aim to have that just as soon as possible. Things like the rim and elevations of drainage basins and things like that. We know those are still owing. So I'm hoping my objective is to just assemble, first of all, answer any questions that we can about what's before you, and then assemble a list of things that you want from us to supply in the next 7 days or so we can continue the process. We also just got what we needed to finish a sewer drawing so we can get our application to the sewer district. That will be done very, very shortly. We have completed our submissions to the Conscom. I walked with the Conscom on Saturday. We have a pretty clear idea of what's going on there. And I walked the site with Brandon Kibbe from the Open Space Committee, and we have actually a pretty good agreement on where a trail is going to run to connect the two pieces of open space, Reno and Saliba. There'll be at least 1.5 acres, it looks like, that will convey to the town to connect those sites, possibly more. Partly depends on the phasing of our construction. But that's just preamble. I wanted to hand it off to you guys to see, you've had some plans for a little while. Great big drawings are probably open on your desks there, and you have questions. So one questions first, and then a list of what we're missing. Does that make sense?
Okay. I'll start it off by I'm not quite sure. I've got a piece of paper here that's headed timeline, and it looks like about midway down, you've got some comments from the building inspector.
Would those have been on our view?
Yeah, those are the viewpoint comments.
Viewpoint comments, okay.
And I just wanted to make sure that you're aware, I assume you are, they said something about the 60-foot space around the building and the structural requirements for the size of it.
I did see that. And yes, I believe we're aware. I don't think there were any issues with those comments. I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at the same ones you are.
Sure. Well, one of them is a one-story unlimited allowable area building is allowed only if the construction type is 1A construction. That was not shown on the plan. And his second comment was this building is surrounded, the building is surrounded and adjoined by public ways or yards not less than 60 feet in width. And I'm not sure that your basin location currently shown allows for that, or if you've actually, I would assume it would not be a problem to get a 60-foot width, which
I think his concern is where the two buildings meet. If you look at the plans closely, there's a space between the two head houses. And I think he's raising the issue that needs to be 60 feet or the buildings need to be conjoined, I believe.
Ooh, I didn't read that into it. Okay. So anyways, I just wanted to make you aware of that. Make sure that you are aware.
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, and I'm following all these comments. The other thing I didn't mention is that you saw the comment from the fire department, and we've had a follow-up with the fire department, good meeting, and resolved their issue. So, and that also related to the path around the building.
And how was that issue resolved? Are you proposing asphalt, or are you still proposing gravel?
Well, what their main issue was being able to turn the trucks around. It was less about maintenance of the road than having something that they knew they could turn the trucks around in. So what we sort of compromised on, and it's posted online, and if Nick Long is on with me, if you want to look at it, he can show you on the screen. But basically, at either side of the area where the buildings will join, we're going to have 2 large turnarounds, and they'll be paved. And then, so that's sort of the compromise. We'll pave 2 large turnarounds there, and then we will have a it'll be a gravel hard packed path all the way around the building. So they'll actually meet those 2 large turnarounds, and we'll keep them clear of snow. One of the issues is that since we may continue to build in a phase 2 to the north there, on your screen it's the east, but it's the north. We don't want to put asphalt there and then go rip up the asphalt. It would be just a hard packed gravel, and they were okay with that as long as they had 2 turnarounds and that we kept the part that goes around the building clear of snow, which we'll just do as a matter of our regular snow clearance.
So if I heard you correctly, there are going to be 2 paved turnarounds, or are they going to be gravel?
The turnarounds will be paved.
So how much?
The connection around the donut will be, or not the donut, the U there will be gravel.
So how much impervious area does that add?
I think the proposal we ended up putting out may reduce it.
Okay.
We're actually making a fair number. The other thing we've done to reduce impervious surface, I should mention, I'm glad you brought that up, is to reduce the width of our driveway from 24 feet, which was on plan, to 20, because I think we can get away with 20. But Nick, you're on the phone, right? Can you speak to what changes in impervious might have happened from that change?
Yeah, the exhibit Adam's shown there that's what we sent to the fire department late last week, and it shows the turnaround and the reconfiguration of the parking to the west and the gravel connection between both of those areas to take care of the phase 1 portion of the construction of the site. Now, phase 2 would happen, then we would build the rest of the parking area and the loading dock and then connect it with a gravel path around the outside. As far as the decrease in impervious, we're looking at decreasing the width of the access drive to 20 feet, and then, which I believe the minimum is 16 feet, but we're only going to go down to 20 feet. And the parking areas, we're going to reduce that to the 22-foot aisle width requirement to help reduce the overall impervious of the site.
What's the distance from the proposed parking area to the proposed detention basin?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can probably measure that.
Well, that's one question I would have, is to understand the distance and what protections are in place to prevent sediment and suspended solids from the parking lot to go into the detention basin. So that's one question that I would have. The other question that I have, and it may be because I just can't find it or I'm not sure where to look. If I look at the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, Volume 2, I'm not seeing specifically detention ponds, and I'm wondering if you can point me to that. Where I would find those specs.
I'll answer your first question. It's 60 feet from the parking to the basin.
Okay.
And if Chi Man is on, he is our Massachusetts engineer. I'm going to let him answer the second question. If you're still on.
He's muted.
I'm sorry, just got myself unmuted. Can you repeat the second part of the questions again? I understand you have concern about the TSF removal rate.
Well, I have a question regarding the TSS removal rate, but I also would like to understand, in your proposal, you talk about the detention ponds that you're proposing as well as 2 filter swales. The question that I have is I certainly can find filter swales, but I'm not seeing specifically detention ponds in the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook on structural specifications. So can you point me to where I would find that?
Well, certainly there is the under DEP, there is a stormwater management handbook that specifically outline each BMP and what their TSF removal capacity.
Right, and the structural specifications, yeah.
Yes, and the design guideline and also maintenance guideline as well, and any of those, and all this detention basin. They are I should call retention basin because we designed this as, you know, we also promote infiltrations. Detention is strictly lined, detain the runoff and let it go on a slow rate. There's a difference between detention and retentions, and retention actually has the water quality volume. For strictly detention, it doesn't give you much of the TSF removal rate, but this retention basin, they are going to be equipped with the forebay, which provide, I believe, is 44% TSS removal.
Okay, so you are proposing forebays then. I don't see those specified in the plan, and I didn't see any. Maybe I just missed them.
Yeah, right at all the head wall, we are proposing forebay, except maybe on the roof drain, which is considered clean water, which doesn't need treatment prior to discharging to the infiltrations.
Okay.
So detention basin itself we are going to also have you know, planting added to the retentions, and also the structure. We usually specify engineer soil, which is typically around I believe 30% loam, 30% sand, and also what do you call the gravel, and it's a mixture. Engineered soil that has good perforation rate and also promote planting. So we'll have planting on those basins. So while we have the retention, which means infiltration, it will filter out the runoff prior to, you know, the discharging downstream, and all these basins are designed with the require water quality volume that, you know, that will be holding those required amount of runoff and infiltrate into the ground.
Okay, so what it's called in the paperwork that we received was detention ponds, and that's what I specifically looked for in the Massachusetts structural BMP specifications. So if you could, in your revised application, I'm looking at volume 2, chapter 2, the structural BMP specifications for Massachusetts stormwater. If you could point me specifically to what component I should be looking at to meet that discusses your design, that your design falls into, the category your design falls into, that would be helpful. Because specifically I was looking for detention ponds and couldn't find them.
Yeah, we also prepare the additional, you know, supplemental informations for the submittals, and that will have all the TSS removal calculations included in the package.
So, excuse me for a minute, but Paula, do you have the reduced plan set in front of you?
I have the plan set, yep.
Okay, so it's the fifth from the back. It's sheet C802. They have some really good details on their basins.
Yeah, but what I'm looking for specifically, Matt, and I did see that. I see the concrete manholes. I see the manhole specifications. I see all of that, and I see the anti-seep collars, the trench restoration, etc. What I'm looking for specifically is in the Massachusetts stormwater handbook, it specifies, you know, structural components that are recommended. It specifies, you know, the peak flow, the recharge, the total TSS removal. I want to look at that and compare it to the design that's proposed. And I can't find the specific description for a detention pond, which is what is described in all the literature we've received to date. So I'd like to understand, I did see the filter swales, and I'm certainly familiar with that, and I was able to look that up. But specifically the language that it's called in the application is detention ponds, and that's why I'm asking that question, is where should I be looking in the stormwater handbook?
Okay, yeah, they are labeled differently, I think, in the plan versus the details.
Yeah.
The detail does say retention pond.
Yes.
But
We'll clarify those in our next submittals.
Okay, great.
Also, we Graves hasn't seen this yet, or haven't responded.
They have not. Jeff is here this evening if you'd like to ask him any questions.
Okay, beautiful. Well, I'm assuming that this is going to be the first of at least a couple meetings, if it's, especially since they're not even done their engineering, and we don't have stamp plans, and I mean, there's a number of things that they haven't finished, and they've explained why, and it's totally understandable, because it is very busy right now for that field. But anyways, that was just my 2 cents on the current discussion. Carry on, please.
Yeah, I think they were just looking for feedback, and my focus on this plan, I'm very excited to see this kind of project come to Lunenburg. I'm thrilled that you're working with the Open Space Committee to allow continued access and to allow the 2 existing parcels of town land to be connected. But I do have some concerns about the amount of impervious material that's proposed, and I would like to understand with some pretty specific detail the stormwater protections you're putting in place. So that's going to be one of the big things I'm going to want to see.
Of course.
I don't know if, just out of curiosity, Chi, was the rainwater capture in the plan that we submitted? Or is that added later?
The rainwater capture, the retention system, well, I think it's a different between how we call it. The detention system is included, and also in the stormwater report also include all the hydraulic calculations, the sizing of the pond, and how we reduce the runoff, comparing to 10, 25, 100 years on the pre and post conditions. So,
yeah, I was referring specifically to, we're actually going to reuse rainwater for growing. So we're going to have, I can't remember if it's a 500,000 gallons or a 1 million gallon catch system for harvesting rainwater. So that will make a contribution to reducing runoff, even to what goes in those basins.
The rainwater reuse system is not included in this package.
Right, I didn't see that. I did see it in some of the verbiage that's discussed, and specifically talking about, I saw in your application that the amount of water that you're going to need would require, although Lunenburg has capacity, it would require an increase in the water withdrawal permit that Lunenburg currently holds. So
yeah, we don't have a way around that. We're going to go for that permit and just try to mitigate every gallon.
Right, and I saw that one of your proposals is to capture rainwater and use that, but I didn't see that on the plans. The question that I have is, even if you do that, are you still going to need additional capacity from Lunenburg? And do you know if that process has started for the increase in the water withdrawal? Because my understanding in past discussions with the water district on different matters as a citizen, my understanding is that's a very lengthy and drawn out process. And do you know what the status of that is? Are they going to apply? Do you need them to apply?
Yes and yes. So they were about to apply anyway, I think, for separate reasons. And we're talking to we're basically engaging the consultant that they use to manage the paperwork.
Okay.
And the permitting process. And if he hasn't gotten his retainer check from us, he will shortly. and he's going to do the paperwork to increase the permitted amount. Now, there's another permitted use that is behind us in terms of when they're intending to open and be in operation. I don't know exactly what that use is, but apparently it will give the flexibility for us to go into operation without their hitting their cap. What? Everything all right? Did I freeze?
You did freeze for a second, but you're back.
Okay, so there's another use that's coming into the service after us that will give us the cushion under the permit to go ahead and operate. And so we think we're okay there. Besides, we're going to use way less than we permit because of the rainwater capture.
Okay, and do you know what your request is for your permit? I understand you're going to mitigate some of that, but do you know what your request is?
I want to say, off the top of my head, I think it's around 40,000 gallons a day, and we think we'll mitigate it down to half of that or less. That's just off the top of my head. I can confirm, but I think that's about right.
Okay.
So we'll go from 40,000 down to much less, like half or less than that.
Okay. Okay, and obviously when you submit, the rainwater retention will be included in your plans.
I don't know if they care about that for the permit increase.
No, I meant for our permitting, I meant.
Oh, when the next set of plans or the revisions that you see, you'll see the rainwater.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's relevant to obviously not just the water capture itself, but you need to see where it sits on the landing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Laid out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, we've been modifying that. One reason it's not on there is where it goes is affected a little bit by the trail that we're putting in, or the opportunity for the trail to connect the two pieces of property. That's right where the basin was going to be, so we actually have to adjust the basin.
Okay, because I wondered about that too, is where that would go in relationship to that piece. So, okay, great.
So, any other board members with questions?
I guess I have one more.
Okay.
The sewer flow, have you submitted an application to the sewer department yet? Because the paperwork we shows as of September 3rd is that they were still awaiting the application.
Yes, so we have not, and this goes back to that survey issue. We were awaiting from a surveyor the CAD, file showing exactly where the tie-in is. We had a good meeting with them. They're extremely supportive, and there's not going to be a problem, but we owe them a drawing. So we owe them an application fee to go with that drawing. As far as the flows, there's one other thing we're waiting for. Actually, was supposed to be in today, and I didn't see it. Is a test of the water, the town water. I think we will not have to have a reverse osmosis system here, which means that the amount of water that we actually dump is wildly less than we otherwise would. So to the extent we're using town water for processed water, we could be as low as 3,000 gallons a day. A hunk of which is just employees, so it'll be very low outflow. One of the things we're going to have to ask the sewer authority to do, which I need to remember, Nick, I don't know if I remembered to write you a note about this, but we need to have like a lot of towns, you bill based on water in, and of course 95% of the water in that we use goes to plants, not down the sewer, so we need to make sure we have a deduct system in place.
Okay, great, thank you.
In that regard, I wonder if you could use, now they've got irrigation meters that meter how much water you use for irrigation, so they get subtracted from your sewer bill. I wonder
exactly.
Would they reverse that process for you? Is that what you were thinking of?
I can't remember the gentleman from the convoy I walked with, but he's on the sewer committee and or the sewer district, and he was mentioning exactly that. He said, look, they have a deduct process in place. It'll be something like the irrigation system.
Okay, very good.
I'm getting good advice from lots of places.
Excellent. Well, that's good news for everybody. So if we do have a review engineer, if he's got anything to say, I would love to hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering. Yes, we did receive the plans and the hydrology calculations on August 26th. We have our review nearly done. I was expecting to get the letter out last Friday. I apologize. Things got turned upside down, and I expect to have the letter out tomorrow. As discussed earlier in this evening's meeting, yes, the plans we're looking at are very preliminary in nature with respect to certain aspects. So I'm not going to belabor the point neither here tonight or in our review letter, but I'm going to point the design engineer and the applicant in the direction of where we're looking for additional information. I'm sure for the most part he understands what needs to be submitted. And I just want to make sure that the next round is, next round of review, we can actually have a much more productive round of review. For example, the grading and so forth around the building, I know there's contours there. They're not supplemented with any spot elevations. When I look at the small sketch that's used for the pre-development and post-development watershed plans that accompany the hydrology, and I look at the grading on the 24 by 36 inch plans, looking at it in the eyes of the contractor, if I got to get out there and grade parking areas a certain way, well, it looks like I can basically do what I want. So we're going to make sure they understand they need to get additional information because, you know, where the water flows is critical for how it gets treated. And in the case of the parking areas up in the upper side of the buildings there, it's an issue whether water gets through the treatment train or just down the slope to the stormwater basin. We've also been asked to assist the sewer department, and with respect to that, I mean, the sewer obviously hasn't been designed yet, and there's no, on the plans you have before you, there's no connection down at the street, and I heard more detail about why tonight. No connection up above. Be looking at flows. I'll be interested in whether it's going to be worthy of an oil grit separated, not for oil so much as grit, for any water going down to the sewer. And quite frankly, I was glad to hear about the consideration of rain harvesting. I was thinking that would help the hydrology. And as we were sitting here talking tonight, I was running some numbers. 1 million gallons of storage is 3 acre feet of storage, 3 acre feet of water. That's 3 acres of land flooded 1 foot deep with water. When I looked at the hydrology computations for 2-year storm, the site generates runoff of about 2.4 acre feet. The point is, that's a significant amount of water that the applicant's talking about harvesting, and it certainly would be beneficial to his project. What might be challenging for his design engineer and for us on the review side a little bit is, how do you quantify that in the hydrology if they want to take credit for that? So, you know, I'm all eyes and ears, and I'll listen to what they have to say. And on the flip side of rain harvesting is one has to be careful of whether or not so much rain is harvested that the source of runoff to the wetlands is significantly altered. It's one thing if wetland gets fed with a slow, steady seep of groundwater over a prolonged period of time. Then you get a 2-year rain event. It's really insignificant that the rain event doesn't do so much to support the life cycle of the wetland. But on the other hand, if it's kind of wetland that fills up in rainstorms and drains out and survives on that, then the rain harvesting could potentially be detrimental to the wetland. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying things we'll have to take a look at as this moves forward. So in short, Mr. Chairman, we too are a work in progress over here at Graves Engineering, and I'll certainly do the best I can to turn things around as quickly and to, you know, not belabor details at this point when we know the details are forthcoming.
Excellent.
So
Appreciate
if you had like a bulleted list rather than, you know, even in an email, just without just because it'll ensure that we don't miss anything. I mean, maybe everything. Our civil engineers are on the line right now. They may say, look, we go through this all the time. But if there were specific things that you wanted to make sure we didn't miss, like right now, I've just caught, we do have an issue with our outflow to the sewer because we have vermiculite that comes off the boards that we grow plants in. But what I hadn't anticipated showing you, and now I realize I'll need to send you, is we have a processed water recycling. So all the water that we use to wash down our machines every day goes through a recycling system, and it includes wedge wire screens and stuff to remove suspended solids and all that. So you'll see that system can actually render the processed water that goes down the drain pretty minimal in terms of grit and other issues that they're going to get. So I hadn't anticipated needing that. So if they're just little notes or bullets you want to send in an email, it will help us to be more complete.
Certainly. I think what I'd like to do is this letter's so close to being done. I want to get it polished and out the door, and you could use that.
Okay.
There is a culvert that's going to be needed under your driveway. I was going to try to give you a station number. It's probably around station 1+70 or something like that. It's as you come in off the Walmart parking lot, the land drops down, then goes back up. It's that low point there. That's certainly very well that the design engineer already contemplated it with the preliminary nature of the plans, but nevertheless, I would like to let you know that it certainly needs a culvert if they have not picked up on it yet. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I did walk the site last week. I have a much better appreciation of the ground and the gorgeous view that's going to be out at the top of the hill there. And lastly, down at the southwest corner of the site, I know you can see the water tank real well, but there's actually, from some of the test holes that were done, or one of the test holes that were done, there's a view all the way down to a butter's property. They've got a large expanse of the backyard. So buffering of the neighbors, I know it's called out in the zoning bylaw, but we'll be looking into that in more detail as things go down the road here in the design process. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. And the on-the-fly calculations, those have been helpful for everybody involved. And I guess just one more question for you. Do you want to venture a guess at what your turnaround for review for any finalized plans are going to be?
No idea. I used to like to work on a 2-week turnaround for follow-up reviews, and my schedule's been suffering for a better part of this summer, but you know, we're going to be probably 3 weeks out anyways, but I'll do what I can to turn things around. I feel that they probably have some work taking my comments they're hearing from everybody else, and getting those into a set of plans, along with bringing in the new information that was just recently made available to them. So they're a few weeks out anyways, I think, in their plan revisions, and then 2 to 3 weeks from my review once they get to our office.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is just to err on the side of caution that I guess, Sean, you should probably expect maybe a 2 meeting, like a 1 month delay for the review.
Reluctantly, but yeah, I understand. We're hoping to turn our revisions in a week. It might be a little bit longer, but yeah, it's a lot of detailed stuff. So you know, a month isn't unreasonable considering what we have to get to you and the review that has to get.
Well, and that was being conservative. If you get it done in a week, and that might give him the extra time that he needs to have it done for 2 meetings out.
We'd love that.
And Adam, correct, step in if I've misspoken anywhere.
No, unfortunately, there is no first meeting in October due to the holiday. We get bit with Columbus Day this year.
Yeah, I think we're in late October no matter what, right?
The next meeting, it's 2 weeks from tonight, and then the 26th of October.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One other question or point. In some of the material I read, and I read a lot, so I'm not exactly sure where I saw it, but Mr. Walsh just talked about impact to the neighbors, and it was pointed out in some of the literature that some of the plants require 21 plus hours a day of light, and to minimize impact to neighbors, you would propose blackout curtains. I'd like to understand more about that. I'd like to understand how they would operate, what hours they would operate. Is it universal? In looking at the renderings, it does not appear that there's any kind of blackout curtains. And I'm not sure when you're in a greenhouse how that would work. So I would want more detail on that and the potential impact to neighbors.
We'll provide you a spec for the blackout curtains and how they operate when they go up and down.
Okay.
I'm about to speak to a design issue to which I'm totally unqualified to speak, but I think we have room. It's my hope that we're going to have screening trees there. So we may have some trees that come down in the course of site work, but it ought to be more than possible to keep pretty good tree coverage on that side of the greenhouse, particularly because the south-facing part is well, on this map that we're looking at online, it's west, but that's south. So.
Okay, yeah, and that's the kind of detail I definitely would like to see and be able to evaluate.
No problem.
And for everyone's benefit, I'd like to point out that on that section nearest the southwest of Butter, the plans call for about a 6 to 10 foot cut of the parking area or the maneuvering area where the trucks will back into the loading docks. The point being is that, for human activity, people standing up, maybe somebody off the property might see the top of the truck turning and maneuvering, but they shouldn't get the glare of headlights or anything like that. That might help with a little bit of noise from the lower elevations, but anything up high, any lights coming out of skylights or anything up higher, or sound generated up higher may not be so deadened, if you will, by the cut of the earth, but the ground activity down on the ground surface should be buffered just from the earth cut. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you again for joining us tonight, Jeff. That's
You're welcome, man.
Invaluable. I did have one question on the traffic, transportation, and circulation section. It says that you're going to have an hour overlap of your staff. The greenhouses operate from 5 to 1, and then another shift from 12 to 8.
Yes.
So then your parking is going to need to facilitate the maximum of both shifts. Is that correct?
Yes, and I hadn't realized that myself. I think we will have enough for both shifts. I think we have. Nick, do you know off the top of your head how many spaces we have?
49 spaces.
And 60 employees, so that won't be sufficient.
Well, if it's 30 and 30, yeah, it still wouldn't be. But
It's not enough.
Let me get clarity on that, because we have a greenhouse this size in Pennsylvania with about this many staff, and I'll have to figure out exactly. Maybe we don't have, either we don't have enough spaces or I've misstated the shift. So let me get clarity to you guys on that.
okay, and we'll also do clarification on the number of handicap that are required. I'm not sure, you might need one more.
Two's good for the 50 spaces they have, not 49, but it's going to start creeping up by the time they get to 100 spaces or the 98 on the phase 1 and phase 2 build out. That requires 4 spaces total.
Okay. So just so you're not surprised later on by that as well.
You guys give the best kind of review. It's not just criticism, it's guidance. They just don't send me a consulting bill.
Sorry, I have to do that, but it goes to my client.
Excellent. So is there any more input from the applicants or a review engineer or our board members?
I have nothing here, Mr. Chairman.
My only comment, Mr. Chairman, would be in terms of a traffic study. Really two comments. One is, personally, I don't feel like one is necessary given the fact that all of their traffic is going to be cycled through the existing development at Walmart with the traffic light. But two is, given the virus, even if we did a traffic study, I don't know necessarily how accurate that information would be, knowing that traffic volumes are down due to the COVID-19 situation. So,
very good point. However, there must have been some kind of a study done, at least counts taken for when they reworked that very recently.
They did. So let me give you guys a quick update on that. So we have to do a MIPA filing. It's not done yet because I'm trying to figure out if we're filing for phase 1 or phase 1 and 2 together and how that affects construction and stuff like that. But for the MIPA filing, we did trip gen. We had the full traffic analysis done, not new counts, but we used the counts that were done that you just referenced, Matt. And did the trip gen and figured out we have the whole analysis to put into the MIPA filing, and we are going to have to file for a highway access permit because Route 2/13 there is a state highway. So if there are further adjustments to the light or other things, DOT will tell us based on what we submit, and they'll be able to tell us whether they want any further analysis. We think they probably won't because the trip gen isn't that big and the timing of it isn't that significant, but DOT is gonna require that analysis and give us the permit.
They're really going to make you do an access permit?
We have to get an access permit because we're emptying onto a state highway. Yeah.
The secondary access, because they're not creating a new one. They have to prove that their access will work through the existing access.
Okay, that's just surprising to me, but not surprising, I guess.
And also we have utility sewer connections that access to the state highway. That's also a state access permit.
Okay, yep, your curb cuts. Okay, so this is a public hearing and I'm assuming we're going to continue it. We haven't asked if there's any public that has anything to say. Is there any public comment on this? Was it stormwater and site plan?
That's correct.
Don't see any hands.
Nobody raising any hands.
All right. All right, so we need to continue to a date certain. We've already discussed, we don't have a 1st of October meeting. So it would either be our next meeting or 3 meetings, right?
September 28th or October 26th.
So I guess I'm looking to Sean to give us some direction.
Well, I think realistically, most of what we owe you now is fairly technical, and it's going to require some review time. I would love to say, oh, let's talk again in 2 weeks, but realistically, I think we should hunker down and get our technical work done and out to you, and plan to talk at the end of October. I guess what I would hope is that if we do all of our proper homework, that we might be able to approach a approval that day. Is that too ambitious? If we do everything right?
I don't see why not, as long as we get the review back from Jeff and we don't have any red flags from anybody else. I don't think so. Conservation has weighed in. Let me see your timeline again.
No, we meet with them next Monday, right, Adam?
Conservation is in progress.
They have a filing with Conservation. They are waiting to submit to the Sewer Commission, which the information that they'll submit to you will go to the Sewer Commission. The Fire Department has reviewed it in concept and doesn't have a general issue with the layout after their last meeting with Bright Farms. Most of their issues are going to revolve around the the building, and that will permitting issues when they go to get a building permit. So, excuse me, really Jeff's review is going to be the critical piece to getting all of this together. And I think between now and that time, Conservation will have met and reviewed their portion of it. And for information's sake, the wetland is non-jurisdictional. It's a bylaw wetland. So it doesn't meet the standard of federal or state requirements. It's only jurisdictional under the local bylaw. So Conservation's handling it in that manner. It's not even filed with DEP. It's filed only under the local bylaw. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. If that's the way I recall.
No, you got it.
Issue with Matt about that. And, you know, for your edification, Sean, Chi, and Nick, if you get Jeff's letter and you resubmit and Jeff writes another letter, you don't have to wait for this body to review the first letter to go back and say, okay, now we've got these detailed issues. We're going to address those with you. So you can move that process along between the engineers with Jeff between now and whatever meeting you continue to.
Yeah, that's my question. I was going to ask if the board has no problem, we can work directly with Jeff offline and flush out all the issues before he even come back to the board with, I would say, positive recommendations.
How do the board members feel about that? About the applicant working directly with our review engineer?
I mean, personally, I don't have any issue with it myself. The only thing that I would add is, would it make sense to put them on the agenda for September 28th? We can always continue. They don't necessarily need to be there, and we can flush out issues, because my concern would be that we run into issues that we don't necessarily have the answer to. And the more meetings we can have to flush some of these details out, the better off we're going to be in terms of keeping this process on track.
It's a very good point, and it would also give us an opportunity to review Jeff's preliminary review. So it makes sense, right? And again, just to repeat what Tanner said, you can be on the agenda, and if you're not ready, you don't have to join, and we'll just continue it to the late October.
Well, I'll be here and listening in, and there will be other things that I will provide that in the meantime that may be helpful, like the blackout curtain spec, more information on where the trees might be. So there are things that you've asked for that I can provide that won't take a lot of review time and can help to check things off your list. A process question: how do I do I submit those through the view cloud or whatever, or how do I get them to you? And
you can submit them that way. You can email them to me, and we'll upload them to that system if it's something we think needs to be in there. Either would work.
Okay. And are there any other things that need to be printed and distributed? Like, am I going to Staples again?
Well, when you resubmit the plans with all of the detail information on it, the board will want hard copies of those. And we're required by law to have at least one full-size set in the file, and Jeff will want a full-size set for his review. So you're
no problem. I just need to know which things I can hit send on and which I need to go print and bring over. No problem. I only live an hour away.
Why don't you send me stuff, and if it needs to be printed, I'll let you know.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So
yeah, I work in other states. It's really nice to be able to just drive down too and get to you guys.
Okay, and we are going to need that mass PE stamp on the plans as well. So just looking, the site plan approval special permit submittal checklist. So not included was the stamp by PE, so that'll have to be done. So these other things that aren't included are the tree info, the traffic info, photometrics, architectural elevations, signature block, construction details, erosion sedimentation, and there was no waiver letter submitted, so I assume you guys aren't going to request any?
Well, I think they're requesting a waiver from the traffic study, correct? Or is that not a waiver? Is that at the board's discretion?
Well, all of these are at the board's discretion.
Okay, but is a waiver needed to waive the requirement for the traffic study?
Technically, it is, and
So I would suggest you submit that and we could act on that at the next meeting.
I can submit to you guys what we're submitting to MIPA, which I don't know if it amounts to a study. I mean, Chi, you quarterbacked that. I don't know if it meets the requirements of a study, but it's the trip gen analysis by a traffic consultant.
Yeah, well, I have a traffic engineer working with me. He has reviewed all the traffic count provided by DOT that was done earlier on this year. And he also input all the added traffic, and I think he can provide a memo, technical memo, and address to the board that impact is minimal, is no actual mitigation work is required at intersections.
And you can tell us if you want more, and if it's insufficient, if a waiver will do, or you can just tell us whether it's met your requirements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, in my personal opinion, if you've got to go through Mass DOT anyway, I think that would be sufficient. If anybody else disagrees with me, please speak up.
I don't disagree.
Okay. So looking at the checklist, are there any other, this is to Adam, are there any other things that we'll need a waiver request for? So there's tree info.
I mean, all of the things on here would technically need a waiver. And things the board isn't concerned about, or if there are things in there that weren't included that the board feels should be included, the signature block is going to need to be on the plans, because we require the signed plans to be on site in the event that someone comes to look, so that we know it's the final plan. Construction details, they're smattered throughout there. I'll have to look at that again and see. And I think the more detail you put in, that may become an included. Erosion sedimentation, again, that'll be something that you'll be needing to include on the plans. You're going to have to stamp it by a PE. So as you submit the next final set with all the details, we'll look through this again and see if there's anything that does need a waiver, and we'll let you know.
So I guess specifically the things that I didn't hear you mention were the tree info and the photometric plan.
Correct. And the photometric plan, do you plan to have parking lot lighting?
If they're shifted from
Nick, I don't recall. Do we have parking lot lighting in Pennsylvania?
I don't remember. No, I do not remember. If we do, if we're going to have it, we'll provide a photometric plan.
And that's, I mean, if it's not applicable, then there's no waiver necessary. But if there are lights, you'll need a photometric plan.
Well, and I'd also like to understand the impact of the light to the greenhouse itself, and whether or not that's going to be part of your blackout curtains, or how that's going to play. But I do want to understand the light impact to neighbors.
Absolutely.
And then one more question for Jeff. So the not applicable on the floodplain info, is that because there's none on the property?
Most likely they're up on a hill, and I haven't looked that up yet, but there's probably nothing mapped by FEMA.
Right, I don't think.
No, it's called Walmart Mountain.
So we did review the FEMA map, and there's none around the development area. I mean, there's further down towards the brook and so forth, but by the wetland area.
Yep.
Excellent. So anybody got anything else for these guys? All right.
Appreciate your service, everyone. You're really pleasant to work with, and you're helping guide us through this really well. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
We need a motion to continue.
Yeah, we've been requested to go to the second date in October.
No, I thought we just said we were going to continue to the 28th and continue it again if.
You're right. You're right.
So I would.
We continue the hearing for Brightview to September 28th at 6:35 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion about continuing? All right. All in favor, Mr. Cole?
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram?
Aye.
Mr. Brenner?
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Excellent. Very productive meeting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all. Thanks, Chi and Nick.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
So next we have a de minimis change for Baker Brook Tri-Town Landing.
So, received a request, a communication from Bill Castleton, the principal over at Baker Brook, probably the day of our last meeting. And he indicated that there is a water line, water main extension, and fire hydrant. Just zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. Out in front of the building that they have, in construction, realized they don't need. So the fire hydrant is located here, water main travels here. There's also a hydrant here. And this was originally installed for flushing purposes and other just general layout purposes. In doing the construction, they felt that they didn't need it. It was an additional expense, and it was something else they needed to maintain. They indicated they wanted to remove it. They've reviewed it with the fire chief. He has indicated that he has no issue with the removal of that hydrant as it's further away than this hydrant, which is where they would probably be hooking up if there were an incident there. So I bring it to the board for your approval. It doesn't substantially change the nature of the development, and it's not a safety issue per the responses from the fire department.
So I'm sorry, Adam, I missed the part where did you show the new connection to the building?
There is no new connection. This was an extension of the main.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's a hydrant here, right in front of the front door, and this was an additional 500 feet of line and another hydrant that they were using as a flushing point, and they've determined through their process that it's unnecessary from their operational perspective, and the fire department doesn't feel that they have an issue with it.
Okay. Yeah, and we've got an email copied from Chief Sullivan saying to that effect. All right, anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
I guess my only question is, do we have any feedback in terms of the water district, knowing that they would be the ones flushing the hydrant?
I do not, but there is a hydrant at the terminus, what would be the new terminus of the line in front of the building.
Okay, and I love, Tanner brings up these great things that I hadn't even thought of. I'm not sure how important it is to get them to weigh in. If the fire chief is satisfied with it, I don't understand what problem the water district would have, but I'm not a water commissioner, so how does everybody feel about that?
I guess my only concern is, I mean, it was designed that way for a reason at some point. I mean, we don't design projects to run extra water line. So what was the original mindset behind running that extra line and having an additional hydrant? I mean, my recollection was that at one point this project was going to have 2 buildings, and then the plan changed and we went to 1. Is this a result of the fact that now they only have 1 building out there, or like what, I guess what caused the need or the lack of need for this water line is my concern.
It was the I apologize. It was they moved the connection of the water line to the building per the email from Bill Castleton. So it says they relocated the connection to the northeast side of the building, and with that they didn't need that extension. So they didn't seem to highlight the new connection though. Okay, it looks like, I think originally the water connection was coming through the building on this side. Now it connects to the building here. So my expectation would be this was brought around to connect to the building over here, with the fire hydrant being put there to flush the end of the line. Now this fire hydrant is past the building connection, which is now here. So this is additional line that isn't needed because they're not connected to the building. It appears to be an architectural alteration that changed where they brought the service in.
I guess my only comment there is highlighted in the red shows the water main running all the way to the hydrant, but it doesn't show a line going to the building. So I'm having trouble understanding why. I guess we don't have the original plan, so we can't see what was originally.
Give me 1 second, I can find the original plans.
Planned, but I would anticipate if the water main, as shown in red, had a line running to the building, then I can logically deduct that, okay, well, you came in the other side of the building, so you don't need that. But on this plan, it shows the water line entering the exact same spot it does now. So I'm not sure why we're shortening the line like that, but yeah.
I'll just say my suspicion is that where it forms an L, I believe it was two separate buildings that were in a very similar spot, and it probably just connected to that second building that's interior connected now. That's just a speculation, but Adam will show us the plan.
Yep, here's the previous proposed water connection.
Yeah.
And there was no connection over here. So the architectural alteration brought the water in over here for some, I'm guessing, building purpose, eliminated this connection, and thus this stretch of pipe is unnecessary.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yep, they just erased the line before they made them red.
So it would have been right about here.
All right. Does that satisfy your concerns?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, a lot more sense to me. Thank you.
Sure thing. Anybody else? All right, I guess I would accept the motion then.
I'll make a motion that we approve the de minimis change for Baker Brook Tri-Town Landing.
Second.
Excellent. Paula, second. Any further discussion? Roll call. Mr. Cole. All in favor. Mr. Cole?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Eric, did you have something to say?
No, sir. I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, okay. No problem. I just didn't want to cut anybody off. So, Mr. Cole.
No worries.
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram.
Aye.
Mr. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Congratulations to them. So now we have minutes approval. We have the last meeting and the last public hearing. Anybody have any concerns about them? If there are no concerns, I would accept a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of 8:24.
Second.
Who's the second?
Mr. Cole.
Very good. Any more discussion about that? All in favor, roll call. Mr. Cole.
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram.
Aye.
Mr. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Now the public hearing.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes for the public hearing for Northfield Road, Holman Street West of 8:24, the meeting of 8/24/20.
Second.
Mr. Cole seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call. All in favor. Mr. Cole.
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram.
Aye.
Mr. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. We have succeeded that portion as well. All right, committee reports. Stormwater Task Force. We still have not met since February. Agricultural Commission. We met a week late, so we met the 27th of last month. We tried to get a special meeting. We weren't able to do that, so we're going to be meeting again this Thursday. Our last meeting, I've only watched about half the meeting, so I've only gotten to half the minutes. It was a very good meeting. We have full five members and 2 alternates, and no vacancies left on the Agricultural Commission. So we are ready to hit the ground running. We decided to draft a letter to send out to involved bodies with primarily about animal complaints. Just kind of reach out, let people know we're there, and specifically request that the animal complaints get handled the way that they are written in the bylaw. So, and then just maybe make some public awareness of that, because animal complaints is a very big thing to have locally with the AgCom and the Right to Farm. And the farmers market continued to do well. We've had 19 vendors for the last 3 Sundays. We have 4 more Sundays, so we'll go to the 2nd Sunday in October. So please come check it out if you haven't. I know that there are some regulars in this group. And that's about it for the Agricultural Commission. The TCP Building Design Committee. Oh, I'm sorry. Were there any questions? Okay. Go ahead. Take it.
So TCP BDC last met on Thursday of last week. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I did watch most of it. Several groups have reached out to the committee and expressed interest in occupying some space in the building. The Grange, Boys and Girls Club, the Lunenburg Lions have all reached out. And we're in the process of hopefully having something ready for the November town meeting. Personally, I have mixed feelings about presenting this project at November town meeting, and I was honestly looking for some feedback from the board in terms of what our thoughts are. You know, I look at my role on that committee as representing this board, and despite the fact that I have my own reservations, you know, to the extent that I can reflect our thoughts on the process. That's what I'm there to do. My concern with November town meeting is special town meetings aren't as well attended. And if this project is put on the November town meeting, it will undoubtedly require a ballot vote, which would require a special election. So essentially the process would be, if we are able to get an architect, get the architect to come up with a cost estimate to move the project forward, it would go on November town meeting. But then if it's approved at town meeting, we would have to call a special election in order to initiate the borrowing of money, essentially a debt exclusion, in order to fund the project, which at this point we don't have a cost, but numbers have been floated around between $7 and $10 million to do the complete renovation, to repurpose TCP for town hall and community uses. Personally, I would rather see this on a Springtown meeting. I think it'll be better attended. The town wouldn't have to bear the cost of having a special election, because you would have the Springtown election that you could put the question on that ballot. And in the interest of including people and having more people provide input on the vote, my perception is that it really should be a Springtown meeting issue. This Springtown meeting, a lot of the issues were decided by 50 or 60 people. Out of a town of 11 or 12,000, I don't know that that's democracy as I see it. But welcoming any input you have, and I will take it back to the committee at the next meeting. So.
Anybody?
Mr. Cole, I hear your concerns, and I personally think they're very good concerns about really the vote being accessible and economical effectively. What would the arguments be, or would people be making in favor of having this at the special town meeting instead? What's the advantage of that approach as people see it?
I think a lot of it revolves around timeline, in terms of, okay, we want to move the project forward, so we get it on fall town meeting. Other than that, I don't really see an advantage to it. Essentially right now, with the impacts of the virus, it's really difficult to navigate some of these situations. I don't know. It's a tough thing to really get your head around, but I've always felt like anything you can do to encourage more participation is in the best interest of the community. And Springtown meeting is certainly better attended than Fall Town meeting historically. And it gets us around the situation where you need to call a special election, because essentially, if this project goes on Springtown meeting, you follow the normal, quote unquote, normal process in terms of, you have town meeting. If it gets approved, it's on the ballot. If it gets approved on the ballot, it moves forward. By doing it as part of the fall town meeting, it's a special process, because even if it gets approved at fall town meeting, there's no ballot. And so you need to call a special election in order to get those people to vote on the ballot. And knowing that this is an election year, now we're going to have the November election, and then we're going to have a special election thereafter. So essentially, people are going to go vote in the presidential race, the state election, and so on, and then they're going to be called back to vote again for this one project, essentially, because I don't foresee anything else being on the special election for December, January, however the timeline works out. And essentially, in terms of the committee, we're kind of on a timeline as far as the warrant opening and so on. Like, we don't have a lot of time here. We've got to get all of our stuff in order and get this thing charged up and ready to go. So.
Oh, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Now, how about the contract that you have with the architect? Is that got a time frame on it?
That's a good question. I don't think there's an ending to the contract. The contract, as I understand it, and the town manager would really be the best person to weigh in on this, but the contract was for up to the $250,000 that was approved by town meeting. And essentially the architect just keeps moving forward until that money is expended, and then the contract basically comes to a halt. But I don't think we're anywhere near that. We could certainly make it to Springtown meeting with the funds that have already been allocated. And I feel like, given the nature of the environment right now with the amount of engineering demand that there is, I think we're going to be hard pressed to get to fall town meeting, even if that was our ultimate goal. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done and a lot of details that need to get flushed out. I mean, at this last town meeting, at the last committee meeting, they were flushing out the details of who's going to be in the building, and new information came to the superintendent saying, I don't want to be in the building. It's going to be too noisy. I'd rather be in the Boys and Girls Club. Well, this is pretty substantial information for an architect to try to digest in terms of, okay, well, we had a design that it was going to be town offices, superintendent, and community uses. Now the superintendent, who are, depending on the numbers, occupied about a third of the building, they want to leave and go in the Boys and Girls Club, and now the Boys and Girls Club is coming in and occupying that space. I mean, these are pretty substantial changes for an architect to try to digest and have this whole thing ready to rock and roll for November. So we'll see how all that pans out. But I guess ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm looking for feedback from the planning board to say, okay, are we in favor of supporting the initiative to move forward to fall town meeting and force a special election if fall town meeting approves the project?
Personally, I would not be in favor of trying to force it in the fall. I don't think that there would be anything but benefit gained from putting it off to the summer, to the spring. And I've actually been following. I think you may still, well, I don't know. Has anybody mentioned the community kitchen cafeteria aside from me? Because there's grant money available for that as well.
In terms of the community kitchen, you're referring to the kitchen that's essentially just for the community uses, because at the last meeting, we were talking about a few different kitchens. PAC wants a kitchen and the Lions want a kitchen. So we're up to 2 or 3 kitchens in the building, depending on how it shapes up.
Okay. Please remind me about that in board comment if I forget.
Okay.
I'm going to write it down. All right. So I guess he's looking for a straw poll. Is that correct on how we feel about it?
When's the next building design committee meeting?
Good question. I'd have to look at the website. Unfortunately, I've been hoping that we would get into a routine where we were like the first and third Monday or something like that, but it's been shifting a little bit. And I don't know what they laid out in terms of the next meeting.
Okay. So I'm not necessarily in favor of the fall town meeting, nor am I against it. I would need more information, such as how much does the special election cost? what's the rationale behind trying to jump it forward. I think Mr. Allison's point relative to grant funding is important. I'd like to understand, is there a plan to go forward with grant funding to assist with some of these spaces? So for example, a nonprofit of the Lions Club, the Boys and Girls Club, I'd like to understand the financial picture, whether grant funds are included or whether there are supplemental funds. So I have a lot of questions regarding the reasoning for trying to move it forward and understanding, is there a catalyst for that? If it's simply because we want to, then I have some concerns about how well thought out the plan is going to be for a November meeting, because I'm hearing you talk and it doesn't seem to me that there's a real plan yet. If we've got all these different people that want quick kitchens and we've got new groups and now the superintendent's office is moving out, it seems like the plan is in flux. So that would be one of my biggest concerns, is to make sure that whatever is presented is the plan. Because I think, if the Boys and Girls Club building is going to change uses, I think it's important that that be part of the plan. Because that's been the stumbling block to the town all along, is what is the plan? And I'm concerned with some of the comments that I'm hearing is that, we just found out the superintendent wants to move and now the Lions wants in, and the Grange so that concerns me. But I'd really like to understand from the building design committee, what's the catalyst for trying to move it forward? The other concern that I would have is with COVID, the participation that's going to happen. Obviously none of us has a crystal ball and can tell what May is going to bring, but I'm hopeful that it will be a little bit better than it is now. So I have that concern as well.
In terms of the cost of the election, and I'm going off of memory here, but I recall the number of about $1,200 is what it costs the town clerk to pay for everybody to staff a special election. But that's going off of memory. And it's not something that we discussed, so to speak. In terms of the rest of the plan, I think the challenge for the committee is that we've been given a charge to develop a cost estimate to repurpose the building. And in terms of determining who goes into the building and what the uses are, the selectmen's feeling has been that it's within our purview to decide, okay, Boys and Girls Club and the Lions and so on get involved in it. But that creates a lot of issues that we don't have any control over, unfortunately. We don't have control over who goes in the Boys and Girls Club space when the Boys and Girls Club moves out, and who pays to renovate that building for the superintendent's use. There's a lot of moving pieces to this puzzle that are outside the jurisdiction of the committee. So even though we may be able to thoroughly plan what goes on inside the footprint of that building, how it relates to all these other town functions is really outside our purview. And all of this goes back to the master plan, right? Because, we can talk about, okay, well, at the last committee meeting, the superintendent said, oh, geez, I don't want to be part of that building. I'm concerned about how noisy it's going to be. I'd rather be in the Boys and Girls Club. Well, that's only one piece of the puzzle when you really think about it, because we're going to vacate Town Hall and we're going to vacate Ritter. Okay, well, what are those costs? That's not inside part of our purview. We weren't charged to look at those buildings and repurpose those buildings. That's all part of the master plan process. But ultimately, right now, the thing that the committee is wrestling with is, do we get this thing all ready for fall town meeting? And I'm very opposed to it. I look at fall town meeting as being more of a planning board zoning article, small meeting that cleans up minor issues for the town and doesn't deal with the real meat and potatoes of town government. I always look at spring town meeting as being the deciding factor in all of this stuff. And in my mind, that's, you know, if you go around town and ask people, oh, when's town meeting? They all say the spring. They don't say town meetings in the fall. And historically, it's well attended. I mean, this spring wasn't well attended due to the virus, but I think as a committee, we should be doing anything we can to encourage participation. And part of that is timing it when people anticipate it, not doing things at special meetings. You know, at Springtown meeting, our earth removal bylaw was decided by 50 some odd people at Springtown meeting. Do we want a 10 or a $15 million project decided by 50 people out of a town of 12,000? I don't think so.
Well, I would counter that with even at Springtown meeting, I mean, we usually have 150 is large attendance. So that concerns me. I mean, that's always concerned me about town meeting, and everyone I talk to, I encourage to attend. I guess, I hear what you're saying about not when they expect it. If such a big issue is going to be on the fall town meeting, my advice or my recommendation would be that be very well publicized and a huge effort for community outreach be done. But I would really like to understand what the rationale is behind trying to move it to fall. And honestly, based on what you're saying, I'm not sure how that could even happen, because I don't know how you're going to flesh out complete architectural plans and costs for November. But I'd like to understand the catalyst, what's driving that push.
I think that from my perspective, the push is really timing, is to try to keep the project moving forward. There's no deadline that we're up against. The architect's contract does not expire at any point. It's really a timing thing more than anything else. I haven't seen any reason from the committee otherwise. Let's put it that way.
Well, another thing is we're talking about a meeting in November, but the warrant closes in 2 weeks.
Well, that's just it. And that's what the building committee is up against, is really at our next meeting, we need to approve the article to go on the warrant so
Right.
that when it closes, it's done. And that's why I wanted to have a little bit of feedback from the board to say, okay, are we really in a spot where, okay, we feel comfortable, like tonight, we want to move this thing forward, knowing that last Thursday, they were just getting new information to say, oh, the superintendent wants to move from here to here. I mean, to me, it was pretty amazing to see how much shifting was going on. I mean, part of the charge of the committee was for school and community uses, and the superintendent occupies that space now. And to hear last Thursday that they want to move out was, to me, pretty shocking. I figured that it was kind of, a anchor point of the whole building, and is town uses, meaning all the town functions, the superintendent's office being in there, and after school coverage, and hearing that the superintendent wanted to vacate the space was astounding to me. But who knows? At the end of the day, it may not matter at all. The architect may not be able to pull everything together in enough time to get us to fall town meeting. But I think, based on the architect's comments, I think what we're going to end up with is a conceptual plan that basically draws things out and gives us cost estimates, but it's more or less based on reusing the space and creating a lot of flexible areas in the building that could be an office for the superintendent, or it could be an office for somebody else. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my big sticking point with anything that the committee is working on right now really comes down to fall town meeting. Personally, I'm opposed to it, but I'm here as a representative of the planning board, and despite the fact that I might personally be opposed to it, if the board is in favor of moving forward to fall town meeting, then so be it. So there you have it.
Well, thanks, Tina. One of the things that you just said raises another concern for me. I mean, the town appropriated a significant amount of money to have these plans done. And I don't know, it was my understanding that we'd have more than a conceptual plan. We would have a detailed plan with detailed costs, and I'm not hearing that that's what we're going to end up with.
Well, I mean, the article that was approved at town meeting gets us to construction drawings. So, and it covers a significant portion of the engineering that is needed to build the building. It doesn't get us to stamp plans and doesn't get all the little minutia worked out, but it gets us to a point where we can have a reasonable cost estimate. I think given the amount of information that was thrown at the architects last week, it's going to be really difficult to see them get this all squared away. I mean, kitchens are involved. I mean, it's not like creating office space. You've got plumbing supply, utilities in terms of gas, electric, ventilation, sprinklers, drainage. I mean, there's a lot that goes into supplying a kitchen. And to hear that, okay, we want to do 2, possibly 3 kitchens and have them located in different wings of the building. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that process. And so I'm not sure that we're going to get there anyway, but ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not a fan of fall town meeting. I think we'd be much better off doing something in the spring, especially given the virus. But, you know, that ultimately is what I would like the feedback on. And the rest of it, I'll report back in terms of, you know, what the architect's coming up with in terms of plans and how that may relate to the other buildings and so on. So.
Mr. Torgerson, got any thoughts?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna pretty much reiterate what was already said, is that the building needs a lot of work just to remain being a usable building. And I mean, construction drawings can do just that, regardless of the space's use. So on the one hand, if the architects are, I mean, they've done all their interior and exterior surveys, and they've gotten all their structurals and all, everybody's taken a look at it and they've weighed in on it. I mean, is that correct at this point?
Yeah, so they've done the civil engineering's done, the scan of the building's done. So they have the footprint of the building pretty well worked out. Up until last week, they had areas mapped out for the superintendent's office. And one of the issues they were dealing with is the square footage for the superintendent. And the minute you add the Boys and Girls Club, now you're kind of in a spot where you've used up your usable square footage. The fact that the superintendent is leaving resolves some issues, or the superintendent expressed interest in leaving, resolve some square footage issues, but they still got a fair amount of feedback in terms of the Grange having interest in the space and the Lions. I mean, that's new information last week. So they've got to take all of that information and work that into the existing plan. And then essentially we're going to look at the plan, and we need to decide at our next meeting if we're going to move this thing forward. This is kind of a one and done thing, because if we don't move it forward at our next meeting, then it's going to Springtown meeting, like it or not. And we're going to have a lot of information to digest. That'll be the first set of plans we look at that include the Lunenburg Lions or the Grange, and take the superintendent out of the building and put the Boys and Girls Club into the building. But at any rate,
Go ahead, Paul.
Just one of my questions would be in looking at grants, and again, I don't know if that's part of the equation, but in looking at funding opportunities, typically they're a June, July deadline. So one concern or one thought that I would have is if we don't vote on it till May, does that eliminate grant opportunities? But I don't know if that's part of the equation. And again, that's why I would really like to understand, is it just because they would like to get it voted and keep it moving, or is there a true catalyst behind voting on it in November? I am just wondering, is there some other reasoning behind why going forward in November? Because I do think that, having looked at a lot of different grant opportunities for other committees that I serve on, it's usually early summer the deadlines are. And whether or not that factors into this, I don't know.
well, the grant issue really hasn't come up in our discussions, other than our chair made a public comment about the community kitchen grant. That's certainly not an issue that has been discussed relative to moving forward to the November town meeting. In other words, we haven't had a discussion that says, geez, we really want this on November town meeting so we can apply for grants for early summer next year. And honestly, I don't know how that would factor in terms of the special election process. And, we've got to go to the town and look for a debt exclusion in order to raise the money for this project. And then I'm not sure how that works in terms of, okay, well, do we go to the town and ask for 10 or $15 million? And then if we get the grants, we would obviously have to borrow less. I know the community kitchen grant is out there, but I don't know the status of it in terms of if the governor has signed the bond bill that approves that borrowing to fund that particular grant that we were awarded. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my feeling is a lot of planning that needs to be done. But regardless of that, if we had this thing nailed down and dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's, I still wouldn't be in favor of going to fall town meeting. I'd still want to go to spring. That's just personally where my angle on things. I look at fall town meeting as being a clerical, kind of clean things up and, maybe touch up some zoning stuff, planning board issues, and leave the meat and potatoes for a spring town meeting when historically you get better participation. So.
No, I completely understand that perspective. I'm not necessarily opposed to a fall town meeting, but I'd have to understand why. In addition to the community kitchen grants, there are grants for recreational spaces, for multi-generational recreational spaces. There are a lot of grant opportunities that are out there. And I do think that potentially could play into the reasoning behind moving forward. So I just, at this point, I would like to have more information on exactly why. And if it's simply because they want to keep the timeline moving, I would have concern about that. But I think that right now, it doesn't, if the warrant closes in 2 weeks, I don't know how you're going to have the information you need to include in the warrant article. As far as the amount, we've done it before as a community, vote an amount up to, and then only borrow what we need. So I don't know if that's a real stumbling block.
Then one more thing that I don't remember hearing anything about was the interplay between the potential of a skate park and right next to the TCP. Has that area been discussed at all as far as parking needs?
So it has been discussed, not in detail. All the civil engineering work is done. Greg Roy, the chairman of the building design committee, has been involved in the skate park. So I anticipate as we get to detailed plans, we'll be able to, really nail down how that all works out. In terms of engineering and parking, we have had lengthy discussions about increasing the amount of parking around the building to hopefully help reduce the queue of vehicles coming off of 2A and provide additional overflow parking for the schools, because the gravel parking lot behind TCP is often used by school uses. So that's all been put into part of the process. One of the challenges we'll face is the traffic study, because right now traffic volumes are a little bit off due to the virus and limited participation at the schools. So we'll just have to sort through all of those details and hopefully come up with a comprehensive solution that addresses not only TCP, but also some of the adjoining uses like the skate park and the middle high school. So.
Okay, no, I just asked because I've also been watching the parks meetings, and they're going from 3 to 5 members. I don't know if that's a done deal, but they definitely want to. Oh no, that was the charter, right? So they've got 5 members now.
Yeah.
And they're not at all in favor of that location. And I know that there's been discussion about the board of the BOS, the select board now, right? Charter.
Yes.
and parks getting together with the town manager for that discussion. So I mean, I don't think it's set in stone, but it does need to be considered, because if you're planning on having parking there and they're planning on having a skate park there, then they both can't coexist. So I think that's just another reason that we push it off to the spring, and that's just my opinion. But
if to get to the end of the conversation, so to speak, if I go back to the committee and say, listen, as a board, we have reservations about moving forward at fall town meeting, primarily because we feel like we need to flush out the details of the plan, but we're also looking towards promoting as much participation as possible. That would be an accurate reflection of where the board is at right now.
I don't think at this point we can comfortably say that.
Okay.
I don't because there's 2 members that have hardly spoken on it.
Okay.
So I mean, and again, I don't know what kind of weight or authority or that would have anyway with that group, because they're a subcommittee of the select board, right? And good.
Well, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm just looking to do my part to represent the board's interest. I try to fulfill that role as a representative of this board, not take my personal agenda there. I have a lot of mixed feelings about that project in general, and a lot of it revolves around the master plan and planning in general. I think there are a lot of pieces of this puzzle that haven't been well thought out. But at the end of the day, the committee right now wants to move forward for fall town meeting, and to the extent that this board supports it, I'll support it. I just don't want to support it and then get feedback from the planning board that says, well, gee, that seems a little short-sighted. Why didn't we do this, or why didn't we do that? That's all.
Well, I think you've gotten that already, some of it.
Yeah. As one of the 2 who barely spoke, I asked questions first and got the answers I needed, and I thought I shared, but maybe I could have been more clear. I would very much, Tanner, I would echo a lot of your feelings on it. I could see a case being made if there were some really grand fiscal benefit to executing promptly. If we had some grants waiting in the wings that we knew we were shoo-ins for or something, or that we were going to lose some money somehow, I could see an argument for pressing forward fast. But since you're saying you're not hearing anything like that, I don't see a reason to press hard going forward and and leave more of the town disenfranchised.
And I guess my thought is if there's a true reasoning behind why moving it forward, other than to just simply keep it going, then I would support it. If it's simply just to keep facilitating, moving forward, I would have concerns that the plan is not completely fleshed out and that the cost may not be accurate because we're trying to force it through. So I honestly, if we were to vote, I think I would probably abstain because I'd want to hear more from what the reasoning behind it is. And if it truly is what you believe it to be, that we just want to keep moving the project forward, then I probably would not support it.
Okay.
So I guess you could relay some of the conversation that we've had and say that there was some mixed feelings and say why, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, absolutely.
I certainly appreciate the feedback. So thank you.
Excellent. And you could even remind them that they could watch the video. But not necessary. Again, all right. I think that was a very lengthy and thorough committee report. Thank you. So the open space. Have you guys?
We did meet and I reported at our last meeting, but our next meeting was scheduled for the 15th, which would have been tomorrow night, but there's not a Zoom meeting available. We're going to try to meet on a regular basis, but unfortunately we couldn't meet when we had planned, so we're meeting September 22nd.
Okay, excellent. And also there was significant input, and I think it was touched upon in the Bright Farm earlier, but there was significant input on the connection there, and I want to thank everybody that was involved in that. That was
yeah,
that was nice.
I was really happy to hear that Bright Farms met with Brandon, because I know we had raised that concern I discussed that concern that we raised at our last meeting, and I'm glad that got relayed and that they're working with the Open Space Committee.
Yep. They reached out the last day of August or the first day of September, and we made the connections. And all right, so the MRPC, Montezuma Regional Planning Commission.
Yes, sir. The MRPC met on September 3rd. The meeting was largely perfunctory and just kind of going over very basic things. A few notes of importance for Lunenburg, at least things that concerned us, were just some updates on the Lunenburg conservation lands mapping, which I think has also been discussed here in previous meetings as well. I think by you, Mr. Allison, but that the Lunenburg Conscom received the grant to put the small maps at intersections of the trails in town, and the MRPC is working or some subsect of it is working for the You Are Here maps that will be installed at kiosks at intersections of the trails and for multiple conservation maps. They've reached out to the town for discussion for specifics of where the maps would be going, and they're still waiting on the response. This is going to be ongoing for several months. The other point of note was the ADA self-evaluation and transit plan for phase 2. Phase 1 was completed using the last round from, I have, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I have it from the last round from DLTA, District Local Technical Assistance, but I don't know what exactly I meant by that. So could be more thorough. Mm-hmm. But they had a pause because due to COVID, the access to the municipal buildings wasn't possible. And it's looking like it's going to be able to progress again now that they can have access to the municipal buildings.
Good.
Great.
Good. Any questions on that? All right. MJTC, want to do the Joint Transportation Commission?
And that's me again. We got that they met on September 9th. two topics from the meeting that are relevant for us looking forward. They did discuss the services they offer regarding developing the master plan and about effectively, and this may not be news to those of you who've been doing this far longer than me, and I understand that as well. But that they offer that effectively the snapshot of this is what the town is now for our use, and it's generally available at no cost to the towns, thanks to grants and everything if it's approved by the MRPC. And they say to specifically look out for an announcement for DLTA funds to apply going forward. So I will keep my eye out for that. And if there's funding available, knowing that that is something that's in our future as well, I will report back on that. The other thing that came up that was interesting was Mass Department of Transportation shared their Shared Streets and Spaces program, which is effectively a grant program for $5 million being distributed in quantities of 5,000 to 300,000. And it is targeting quick launch, quick build projects with the goal of doing things like basically mitigating or improving issues related to COVID in towns. So that would be things like increasing walking or biking safety to regard for things like social distancing, enhancing the ability for curbside or sidewalk retail, dining, civic programming, better facilitation for safe bus transportation, safer routes to schools, or anything else that kind of falls in that purview. Challenge level here is they begin this process on June 22nd, and projects have to be submitted by September 29th. So there is money out there if we think there are the town has any projects that could fit into this. There's some lists of ineligibility. Basically, if you're already going to do it, you can't do it now with the grant. But it's a little more specific than that, and I could get into it if we think there's anything that might be falling in that direction.
They're talking about rehab in Marshall Park. That might have something there. TCP, I don't know if, I mean, we're in planning phases. We haven't made any decisions. I don't know if that would qualify.
From what I'm hearing about TCP, I don't know that that would, based on the intersection I'm hearing from what they described. But the rehabbing Marshall Park.
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely want to reach out to the Parks Department. I know that's on their radar, as well as it's a priority in the open space plan. And that's something that I know Open Space is really is going to try to facilitate moving forward with. So I think that definitely may be something, but whether or not we can put something together for the 29th, I don't know.
Oh, sorry, I missed one of my notes. The goal is for it to be things that are would have to be submitted by the 29th and have to be implemented by October 9th. So they're looking at very rapid deployment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
probably not.
No,
Probably not.
see that in my notes and go, oh yeah.
Some for the farmer's market maybe, but
Yeah, if you could think of something, say the word and we can put something together, because that's the kind of thing I believe they're looking for, is for those very quick things that they can roll out very quickly to make an impact right the heck now in the face of towns that are struggling with kind of changing our rural, suburban, and urban landscape for the virus.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like municipal government, but we've only got one more market after the 9th anyway, so
okay,
I wouldn't even consider it. Any other thoughts? Adam, any thoughts maybe on the Ritter? I mean, you guys maybe could benefit from that, or town
No,
hall.
I mean, this sounds more like active implementation of social distancing, like creating additional walking areas or striping an existing bike or ped lane to have spacing so people aren't walking, sort of striping like a road where you walk on one side to go in one direction, the other side to go the other direction. It sounds more fine-tuning recreational areas.
Just recreational areas?
I use that in a loose term. I mean, sidewalks, curb lines, that stuff is all technically recreation area if you're riding a bike or walking on it. I can look at it. I don't have anything that jumps out at me.
One question I would have is, I don't know the answer to this. You know, you go into offices now and you see all those plexiglass screens everywhere to protect the worker and the customer or resident. Do we have those? Is it something that we need? Or, you know, at some point the library is going to open. Is that something that the library could benefit from? I don't know, but just throwing that.
We do have them throughout the town buildings. They were put in as part of the reopening plan to get the buildings open for the 4 hours that they're open.
Okay.
I don't know if that falls within the purview of what they're looking for, which seems to be, I mean, given it's from DOT, seems to be more sidewalk, parking, street focused.
Okay.
There wasn't quite an explicit statement, but I'm looking down the requirements and they all kind of orbit around that concept pretty tightly.
Okay.
Very good. All right. So, Mr. Torgerson, you're up on capital planning. I saw they met.
Yes, they did meet. Unfortunately, I got stuck at work until about 7 p.m. and I was unable to attend the meeting. So I'm waiting to talk with the town manager so I can hopefully get any information that I did miss.
Okay. Was it not videoed? It was on the 9th, so it should be posted by now. But I don't know. Okay. No problem. Usually their first is kind of fluffy anyway.
Okay. Hopefully I didn't miss anything very important, but I will do everything I can to make sure I'm at the next meeting.
Very good. Very good. All right. So now at 9:04 we start our workshop on our workshop day.
Hey.
Which is not a problem. I mean, hey, we got stuff to do. We get it done, and we'll just be here later. Adam and Marjorie, I suspect Marjorie was behind most of it. Give us plenty of paperwork. So do we want to, why don't we just go in order? A&R processes first, right?
Yeah, so we talked about the A&R process and the implications on the Board of Health and how the two sets of laws interplay. And as I suspected, the A&R law is explicit on frontage and access as the two things that deem endorsement of the approval. There is not any requirement in the A&R process, and there's actually almost an exclusion of conformance with other laws. So I reached out to other planners just to kind of figure out if anyone else is doing this. Some communities do as we do, where they require some statement from the Board of Health, but it isn't used as a manner for denial of the plan or refusal to accept the submission. And I went a step further and I checked in with counsel at office hours, and he said, towns do this. You wouldn't be the first town to do it, but were someone to be denied or refused an A&R and they chose to appeal it to court, there's probably very little likelihood that the town would be upheld, and that most likely the A&R would be granted in that. So I went even a step further and I said, so what happens if the board approves the division that makes someone's system non-compliant? And he said that's an enforcement issue for the Board of Health through the Title V process. He didn't, town council didn't indicate that, the board is the policy-making body. If you, as a group, wish to install something like this in your regulations, you can. Regulations, subdivision rules and regulations, unlike bylaws, aren't reviewed by the Attorney General. They're adopted at a public hearing. They're sent to the Registry of Deeds for recording. They're kept on file at the town clerk's office. But it is something that, while you can do it and it is done, it doesn't necessarily meet with the letter of the 4181P, which is the A&R statute. I did send you the A&R handbook. If you read through that, there's quite a lot of information. None of it refers to boards of health and septic systems. It all talks about frontage, access. There are some sections on access that are probably, they're in there. They're much more peculiar and distinctive than some of the road access stuff. Some of the lot access stuff is a very fine point and very case specific. And, again, really, we're looking to make sure that they have at least the minimum amount of frontage that could be required to access a lot, so 50 feet, and that they're on one of three types of road: a road in existence prior to the issuance of subdivision control, a public road, or a road shown on a subdivision plan. But I did put together two separate drafts that do include requirements for identifying Title V systems, and I believe I included the well on there. If not, I can easily amend that. One has them filing 2 weeks before the meeting. One does not. If we require the filing 14 days in advance, that does start the clock for the 21 days. So essentially, you would be needing to make a decision at the meeting that they come to, or you would need them to willingly extend the time period. Because after 21 days with no endorsement, it's constructively approved.
All right. I had a question about vital access, and it's in the slides that you said. There's no page number. It's the fourth page of vital access. It says an A&R can be denied if the frontage separation requirement is not satisfied, and I don't understand what frontage separation is.
I'm not sure what that is either. I would have to. Those are from the CPTC. I grabbed them and pulled them down. I believe that Mr. Brenner just took that class. I don't know if he has any insight into that.
I did. Let me double check those notes. What is the, because I have copious notes, but the term isn't ringing a bell. Mr. Allison, what was the term we're looking for?
Frontage separation.
You said it was slide 4?
Yeah, with of vital access. The heading, the fourth vital access header.
I will, I'm going through my notes. I will need one moment. I've done a search and I'm checking the various things, but it looks like what I have is not super helpful.
Okay.
Oh, it may be. Oh ho. So I do see that we can deny based on adequacy of access to a buildable lot. And specifically in addressing the frontage separation requirement is not satisfied. That means that there's no actual access. So an example would be if the only frontage for the lot is along a limited access highway.
Okay, and like, I think they refer to that as illusionary, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I have here in my notes. Again, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert, but.
And that would make sense.
Yeah.
I've never heard it referred to as frontage separation, but.
It then got into illusory in more detail. They got into illusory in more detail afterwards. And I think there's some fine line difference between the two from what I'm seeing in my notes, and I'm not 100% sure what the legalese split would be, but they seem to serve roughly the same purpose of can't get there from here, even though it looks like you can.
Okay. Another thing that I noticed was an A&R can be denied if wetlands prevent practical, safe, and efficient access. But it cannot be denied simply because wetland approval is needed.
Correct.
So how are we to decide if they prevent practical, safe, and efficient access?
I would guess that would be a determination you would make.
Well, there's little swamp figures there, and it's called a wetland. And, well, that's simply wetland.
I think if the wetland were an open body of water that were hundreds of feet wide.
On your frontage?
Maybe.
Okay.
Again, it is a ravine that has a wetland and a river in it that crosses the frontage.
Okay.
That gets into the practicable access and the vital access of accessing the building lot, but
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, I mean,
yes.
I feel like I kind of started this process, and the perspective I had was I simply just didn't want to put a homeowner in a position where they subdivided off a piece of land and then come to regret it because they put themselves in a hardship.
Right.
So really, it's not so much about rewriting bylaws as much as it is just fixing a little bit of a loophole where it seems like some of the A&Rs that come through our process have very clear plans. It's fully engineered. We have sign-offs of Board of Health, and then we have other A&Rs that come through the process where we don't have any feedback at all from the Board of Health. And to me, that's not equitable. I mean, at our last meeting, we had one set of plans come through our process, and the people had a sign off from the Board of Health. They had full engineered plans. They had offsets to the building. They had a passing Title V. And the next A&R we get has absolutely zero feedback from the Board of Health whatsoever. No comments, no review, nothing. All we get is hearsay from the applicant that says, oh, well, I've met with Mr. Gariffi and so on. I'm just looking to make the process standardized so that every application we see sees the same feedback. And I think it's as simple as saying, okay, well, before we accept your A&R application, we would like you to sign off with Conservation or Board of Health, or for me, it really boils down to Board of Health. I think Conservation is much more subjective, and if they want to subdivide a piece of land and they need to get a notice of intent to get a driveway in, then so be it. But at the end of the day, I don't want to see a homeowner subdivide off a piece of land and then realize, oh boy, I wish I did a little more research here because I could have used that land for a septic system. That's really all I'm trying to avoid. And I know Mr. Burney made a comment at our last meeting that we have denied A&Rs due to lack of a secondary area for a septic.
Reserve area.
Yeah. So like, where are we at with the process? If we've denied it in the past, but now we're saying, oh, we can't deny it. Well, were we wrong then, or are we wrong now? Because you can't deny it back then and then say, oh, today we can't deny it. That's hypocritical. So I just want a clean, smooth process where every application that we see has gone through the same process. I don't see why a homeowner on the clearing should go spend all the money to get a Title V and get all the engineering done, and the next guy that rolls in with 5 lots hand sketches something and says, oh yeah, by the way, I did a perk test over there and it's fine, no worries. So
I also have a question relative to the Board of Health, because if you look at the handbook on page 81, there's a statement that I find really confusing. It says, it is unclear whether a planning board must allow the Board of Health 45 days to comment on the plan when the only issue before the planning board is the frontage waiver. So I would read that to interpret that the Board of Health has 45 days to comment. And
That's within the subdivision process. And by definition,
why
A&Rs are
is
not
that
a
in the
subdivision.
A&R handbook?
Mrs. Bertram, what page was that again?
81.
81?
Thank you.
A&R is a specific type of subdivision.
No, an A&R is specifically not a subdivision.
Well, I mean, you're subdividing land. It's
Correct, but for 4181, subdivision is a term of art that means a subdivision, roads and lot access. And in this case that's being discussed, the homeowner submitted a subdivision plan to the planning board.
Okay, okay.
So if you can't meet the minimum frontage of an A&R,
Mm-hmm.
of the community, and you wish to divide land, you can get a variance from the zoning board.
Yeah.
And in the instance that you get a variance, even if it's on a public road and you wish to divide it, it becomes a subdivision.
Okay.
You have to go through the definitive subdivision process to separate those 2 lots.
Mm-hmm.
And without going back and reading several pages, my inference is that this is in the section about frontage waivers within the A&R handbook and how they don't qualify as an A&R, and they are actually a subdivision by the law.
Yes, you are right.
Yeah.
And to Tanner's point about were we wrong then or are we wrong now? We were wrong then. When we if it was denied based solely on the lack of reserve area, it was a decision that would have been appealable, and the person who was denied probably would have won their appeal.
All right, so let me ask another question then. If we're only looking at frontage and lot dimensions and lot conformance, are you telling me that the planning board could sign a plan that divides a septic system right in half?
Sure.
Okay, well then I would have an issue with that, and I would share Tanya's concern about us signing a plan that we know is going to result in catastrophic problems for the person who divided it. So in the section of the A&R handbook, it talks about zoning violations and that we can't deny an A&R if we knowingly are creating a zoning violation.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that they recommend putting in the slideshow, it says that they recommend putting a statement on the plan.
Yes. And you do that.
So I would suggest that in our A&R process, we require that septic systems, reserve areas, and wells be indicated on properties that have existing dwellings. And if we have to sign an A&R plan that knowingly violates potable water requirements or septic systems, that we put a note to that effect that this endorsement is not a determination that Board of Health regulations are complied with, or something to cover ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because if we're signing a plan that says, that cuts off a potable water supply from an existing dwelling, that's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest we at least ask for that information to be depicted on the plan for for dwellings that, for properties that have
Mhm.
existing dwellings. And then if in fact we are knowingly signing a plan that we know violates potable water and sewage disposal, we put a statement to that effect on our endorsement.
That is exactly what I was intending in the first place, not about being able to disapprove, but simply to be able to get comments like we got tonight at our public hearing about, you guys are so great. You guys have opened my eyes and told us so many things. That's, I mean, we're here to protect the town, but once the people come to town and do something, then they're part of the town too. So if we're protecting their interest, we're the ones that are supposed to know all this stuff.
Right,
and we don't. And it's which is fine, because we can't be expected to know everything. But if we know something, but we can't deny their plan based on it, we should still be able to tell them.
Correct, and that's the process that's been done with distributing the plan amongst town departments is intended to do just that.
If all the town departments get the blank damn plans that we get, they're not going to know where the septic is or the well, or they're going to have to go through their files, or we're just asking to beef up the requirements of the plan that's presented to us, and I don't think.
And I think that's fine.
Okay.
And that's what I attempted to do with both of those sets of regulations that you have.
Okay. I just didn't want to get caught in the minutia of we can't deny it based on that. Well, that's really
No. But that's you can ask for whatever information you want on an A&R plan. That's a completely reasonable thing to ask for.
Right. So I mean, just so that we can point out that, well, you know what? This $3,000 A&R plan is going right through your $30,000 septic.
Right, exactly.
So what I'll do is I did leave off the potable water supply. So I'll amend B 11 and 12, and I'll change what the endorsement does not determine compliance with, so it's more than just the zoning requirements.
Oh, I'm sorry. There were 3 different suggestions on that slide that Paula mentioned.
Yeah, but I mean, they're all functionally the same thing. They're just different.
Okay.
Getting there.
Just different verbiage?
Yeah.
So, not a determination of conformance, not compliance with zoning requirements has been made. Yeah.
So, I mean, my question then becomes, do you want to hold a public hearing to change the rules and regulations to amend 325.3.2?
Now, this is subdivision rules, right?
Yes, correct. And that would to amend the A&R regulations within that, which is what the plan contents are and all of that.
But weren't we already looking forward to making some revisions on that anyway? Didn't we have some already earmarked?
We had talked about it, but if you want to include this information as a requirement on the A&R plan, amending the regulations is the way to do that, to force the requirement. So amending 325.3.2 is just a public hearing by the planning board. And that gives you the ability to change the requirements for what you're looking for within the plan.
Well, the rules and regs is what, a 100 or so page document?
It's 50 right now.
Okay. So I would suggest that we take some time to see if there's anything else that we should, I mean, it seems like it seems an arduous task just to change the A&R process to help other people, because they've supposedly got engineers that are helping them present a plan for us. So
well, it's not a hard process. I mean, it's just a public hearing. It's an advertisement, and you guys read this and say, we're holding a public hearing on this language. We like it or we don't like it, and we're doing it because of this. And maybe people show up and say, don't change that, and maybe no one shows up.
Okay, but I mean,
it's done.
Getting back to the cost of a special, I mean, how much does it cost to advertise and all that? I mean, is it minor, minimal, nothing? It's not.
I mean, we could do it in the ledger, and that would be, I think it's $50, maybe 100 for 2 ads.
Okay.
I mean, from my perspective, Mr. Chair, I was just looking to close up a loophole that I feel like has been on for a long time. And I know we could go through the entire 50-page document and probably find other things that we would like to change. But from my perspective, I'd be in favor of just making these changes and tightening up the process and making it more productive and ensure that people aren't putting themselves in harm's way when it comes to subdividing land. So,
And this would also remove the abutters list requirement.
Yes.
Yes.
I would be in favor of just getting this, if we have language we like, getting it out and done. There's some real advantages to kind of that agile approach to steal the business and coding idea of we have a fix we can put out. Let's put out the fix. It's not going to fix everything, but we have a known problem and a viable solution in front of us.
And honestly, over the last 6 years, 100% of the rules and regulations, well, I'll say 98% of the work done with the rules and regulations has been A&R plans.
Right. Okay. Is everybody in agreement then? We want to go forward with this? So
I am.
So we're going to schedule the hearing for the end of October. If you haven't read what I gave you, please do, and think about whether you want to require the 2-week prior to meeting submission or not. And we can nail down which one you want to use next week. We can talk about any comments you have to this, because we won't be advertising until after the next meeting anyway. So we'll have time to dial this in, unless you want to talk about it right now.
Can you tell me what the difference between draft 1 and draft 1A is?
In draft 1A, under A, there is 2 bullet points, and under draft 1, there is only 1 bullet point. Draft 1A requires materials to be provided to the planning office 14 days prior to a meeting.
Oh, okay.
Proposed, and that will actually start the clock because we're requiring them to also file with the town clerk.
So what's the problem with getting the application the day before planning, or, well.
Theoretically, we could get it the day of.
It doesn't be on the agenda?
We could have just A&R plans on the agenda. You probably wouldn't vote on it because it wasn't on the agenda. But if you file it 14 days ahead of time, we can do the distribution as we do currently. But your time clock starts, so when it gets to the planning board, they have 1 week with which to approve it, unless there's an extension granted by the applicant.
Right, but then everybody else has 2 weeks to decide not to comment.
Correct.
Which is
comment.
Which has not really helped us that much. Especially considering before you got here, typically it was understood that if there was no response, there was no comment, which is, not true. But that gives us 1 meeting, definitely, that we can say no. Other than that, I mean, because with the constructive approvability, all they got to do is go to meetings, and we can't say no, but we don't say yes, and they just go have the clerk sign it.
Correct.
Well, and then there's all these other checks and balances as it moves through the permitting process, I guess, which is another thing we've been a little skeptical of. I don't know, how does everybody, the 14 days is the only difference between these two?
Yes.
And I mean, so we could finish this right now and then have it advertised and have a hearing, or we can,
Well, you can finish it next meeting and still have it advertised. And
We
have,
could still have it advertised. We still have another meeting.
yep.
So what is the theoretical value of the 14 days? I'm having a little bit of trouble wrapping my mind around that.
To allow other departments to comment.
But then it potentially leaves us with our hands tied because I guess my other concern there would be
Thank you.
if we require the 14 days and then right now it's less of an issue because of Zoom, but if we end up with an issue where there's let's say big blizzard, our meeting's canceled, then the time just passes and they get approved automatically.
correct.
Very valid point.
I think in that case, I would be in favor of not having the 14 days. They may not have the official word back from the town on various ideas, like the other departments may not have a chance to comment, but with the rest of it, they've been required to do their due diligence. And I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. We've at least required them to get all the info in front of themselves before they make a bad decision.
So from the discussion tonight, you said you were going to make some changes.
Yeah, on the second page, B11 and B12, I'll change a little bit to reflect the potable water supply and the endorsement warning that it doesn't endorse compliance with. It just currently says zoning, but we can add that to have other things in there.
Yeah.
Good, Paul. Oh, okay. So we require a topo plan, but it's not necessarily this plan. So
What do you mean?
like we require a topographic plan, but it doesn't have the same one that gets signed.
I'm sorry, you cut out. It doesn't what?
Oh, so we require a contour map, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that can be separate from the approval not required plan that's stamped and signed by us.
Yes.
It's very unusual for me to see an A&R plan with contours on it. How about you, Adam?
I don't generally see them with contours on them.
I mean, in other towns?
No, historically, no.
Yeah.
Unless someone calls out a specific instance where they're concerned about vital access.
Right.
I want to
Don't
point
add it
out,
on, but we do require it for all of them.
I want to point out that was a concern with vital access by a building inspector on an A&R lot that we had.
Tonight?
No, it was prior. I think it was Sunset Lane. I don't really remember. But the building inspector was concerned about whether or not this lot allowed for vital access. And this was the problem. They came back with the shared access to the back.
Yeah.
Remember it?
Yep.
Now the only reason the building inspector, whether he went there or not, I don't know, but that topo map is why he was able to determine that this wasn't vital access. In his opinion. We signed it anyway, but that was his comment.
I think in that specific case, the applicant actually went over the 21 days. I think, because we saw him at least twice. I thought 3 times.
Yeah, I think he granted the extension though.
Okay.
At a meeting, he granted the extension.
Yeah, and having, I mean, and then also, we should probably specify what interval contours, because a 1 and 5, a major, every 1 foot contours is considerably different looking than 2 and 10. They're half as dense. If there's no notation, if somebody's on a really steep slope and they give you 2 and 10 contours, it doesn't look that steep compared to 1 and 5s. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
What do you want, 2 foot contours?
No, I want them to be the same scale. If they're different plans, they need to be the same scale, because if you show a house lot at 20 scale and then you show a contour map at 80 scale, you can't match the two.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So both the A&R plan and the topo plan have to be the same scale.
If they're not the same plan. And I mean, I know what it costs to get this stuff on these plans, and it's not cheap. I mean, the topo alone, I mean, we could charge anywhere from $200 to $500 extra just to put topo on a plan like that. And it would probably just be LiDAR. It wouldn't be on the ground or something. The LiDAR would be the easiest. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn, because if somebody has, 5 acres and they're retiring and they want to sell their house and make a few extra bucks on the lot, versus somebody wants to come in and build 9 A&R lots and then come back a few years later and get another one. That's a different story, but I'm not, if nobody else feels strongly about it, I'm not going to push it. But I know that contours can be deceiving if the information is not thorough about what you're looking at.
Would it potentially work if we just required really clear labeling? Because we've had some come through, even in my time here, where you have a contour and we don't know what the contour is. We don't know what the scale is. Would it work okay if they were just specifically specifying the scale, so we had that clue? I mean, the kind of thing that should be there anyway. We shouldn't have to say to people, if you have contours, tell us what they are. But
well, honestly, most of these plans that we see are reduced plans, and the scale is not accurate. I mean, it's to a scale, but not the scale that's reported. If they have a bar scale, a bar scale would be a great requirement.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Scale right up to it and say, well, that's.
So I have a question along those lines in terms of what our requirements are going to be. If we require the high end, so to speak, in terms of topo, they can apply, we can grant them a waiver, but how does that affect our timeline? In other words, once the clock starts ticking, if they submit an application that's incomplete, can we grant them a waiver on that? Or is this something that can't waive? How does that?
Yeah, you can waive anything in the subdivision rules and regulations.
Okay, but how does it work in regards to the clock? In other words, once they submit the application, the clock starts ticking. But if they get in front of us and they don't have exactly what we're looking for, and we choose not to grant the waiver, are we still under the clock?
Yes.
Okay, so we're still under the clock either way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And now, I believe that for not completing the application, you can deny them for lack of information, because without the topographic map, perhaps you can't determine that there's vital access.
I mean, from my...
Which I imagine would be the reason you would not grant the waiver.
Yeah. From my perspective, I'd like to see everything standardized and everybody come in with exactly what they should have. And my concern with the topography is, I think it sheds a lot of light on, how the land works relative to driveway access. I mean, slopes of driveways and things of that nature, that all plays a big part in what is vital access to these parcels. And let's face it, the parcels aren't getting any easier. They're getting more and more difficult.
No, I mean, I think the place where topography becomes challenging or unnecessary for an applicant is lot line adjustments that don't affect frontage or access. I think the Arbor Street A&R that we saw a couple of months ago is a good indication of that, where they were swapping a large piece of backland that didn't touch the frontage of either lot. Topography on that was generally unnecessary because whatever it looks like, they already both have access. But outside of that, I don't see a reason why topography would be something that someone wouldn't be looking to submit, because it just creates the potential for the board to say, well, we don't know if you can actually get in there.
Yeah. So looking at it from a resident standpoint and trying not to put more hurdles in their way, if we develop a requirement that says, okay, you need a very clear topo on the A&R plan so that we can scale it and make our lives easier. If they don't provide that, can they still apply and ask for the waiver? Or does that?
Sure, they can certainly apply and ask for the waiver. And it's up to the board to determine if they want to grant that waiver or not.
Okay.
What does that do to the statutory requirements for the 21 days?
It does nothing to the 21 days. The 21 days just rolls along.
Okay, well, that's my concern. So if we, we only meet every 2 weeks, so we've only got 21 days. So if they submit a plan that doesn't meet the requirements and they ask for a waiver, we don't grant the waiver.
Mm-hmm. It would
What
be in
then?
your best interest to extend that time clock by mutual agreement.
But if they don't,
Then you have I would think you have a valid reason to deny them. You don't have enough information to make
okay,
a determination on endorsement.
okay.
We determine that we can't determine that there's vital access, therefore we reject the endorsement of this A&R.
Okay.
Would it be worth including language specifying that we don't require topo for A&Rs where the frontage doesn't change? That way we're not putting an extra burden on the people who are just shifting lot lines here or there to account for, I want to build a garage and I'm going to give you some backland or something. Or is that just not worth it, we think?
No, I think that might make sense.
Yeah, that might be the workaround.
The only comment I would have there is I would rather grant that by waiver than by default. I feel like it just, in the interest of keeping the regulations very simple, it's like, okay, everybody's going to provide this topo. And if you have a simple lot line adjustment, then you apply knowing that you didn't meet all the criteria, and then we're well aware of it. And we can decide accordingly.
I think my pushback to that would be that we're then kind of hitting back to that issue of being equitable. And that requires someone to know that, oh, well, the board isn't going to care because X, Y, and Z, because it's just a backlot adjustment. Rather than having something explicitly stated, we're kind of requiring people to understand that would be the case intrinsically. So then we'd have people paying for things that we don't really feel they need. I mean, on the other hand, it's not a huge cost. A few $100, but that's compared, I think that's what Mr. Allison said, but that's compared to the overall value of the lot, which is so much larger.
And my concern is trying to enumerate to someone what qualifies for no topo and what qualifies for topo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get into a situation where it seems cut and dry, as about,
you're right.
and the practical application of it is never as simple as just backlot adjustment.
I hate my own idea. You are correct.
I understand the equity of it and the desire for it. I think from doing it day after day, there's a lot of little loopholes that people will drive trucks through.
Why are we eliminating, on another topic, why are we eliminating the need for the zoning classification and location of any zoning district boundaries? You crossed that out on the one you sent out?
I thought the zoning district was included somewhere else. I don't know why we need voting district boundaries.
Not
It's
voting.
not voting, it's just zoning district.
Oh, zoning district. I'm sorry. I thought that was in there. It should be in there.
Yeah, you have it crossed out or struck through, and I'm questioning why. And also, why are we eliminating the requirement for them to record it within a certain period of time?
Because there's no benefit to them recording it sooner or later.
Well, I would just question, being able to go back to the Registry of Deeds and seeing what was acted upon, I think is important. And making sure that the plan that was signed is actually the recorded plan. And without having them do it within a certain time frame, I don't understand how we would ever be able to go check exactly what was done if in the event that there was some event that the plan was lost at the planning board office. I'm not sure if, I know there's a requirement to record orders of conditions. There's a requirement to do certain Board of Health requirements. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't want them to record it.
With Board of Health and orders of conditions, those are regulatory instruments on what someone's doing. Someone could divide a piece of property and decide, you know what, I don't really want to do this right now, but I want to have it in case I want to do it. Maybe I'm not ready to do it when I've got it signed. There's no benefit to us having it recorded. And the logistics of managing that are, I don't see a necessity in having it recorded in 10 days. I have plans, I've had plans sitting in the office for a month before someone came to pick it up. I have seen, I had someone call and say, oh, I have this A&R from 2009. Do you think I can record it? And I said, usually the registry won't take, well, my experience had been previously that the registry wouldn't take anything more than 6 months old. This person was able to record an 11-year-old A&R plan.
Well, and that's what I have a concern about. I mean, if zoning changes after that 11-year period, and the board took an action, but that plan was never recorded, is that plan is that A&R grandfathered?
No, it is not. There's no zoning freeze with that because the plan is dated when it is signed.
Okay, so
the endorsement of the A&R is what's
they don't have to meet current zoning, even if they didn't record the plan.
correct. The endorsement of the A&R is what starts the zoning freeze.
Okay. We're just removing a restriction that we've always had, which said within 10 days.
Yeah, and again, my experience is that it was not followed to my knowledge that I've seen.
Isn't the zoning freeze only for a specific period of time, or am I?
3 years from the endorsement.
How long?
So what was it?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Well, there you go. There's a reason to say, so if they record a plan 11 years after the approval, and the registry allows them to do that, that plan that's now recorded in the Registry of Deeds of having been accepted would have to comply with existing zoning because it's
Correct.
11 years later. And how would a buyer know that? They see a plan that's recorded and it's valid, but then we're going to have to go back to the registry and say, no, this isn't valid because it's 11 years after and zoning changed 4 years after this plan.
Well, it's still a valid plan. It just doesn't.
Yeah, it's just a buildable lot.
Exactly. And
Well,
that's another point where it's like, well, wait a minute here. The issue I have with it is I feel like if people file an A&R today, they're complying with our bylaws that are in place today. And when they put that plan on file at the registry, they legally divide that land. And now that land will be taxed relative to its new classification. So if you take a parcel of 5 acres that has a single family lot on it, and you subdivide off that 1 acre buildable lot, that 1 acre buildable lot plus the remaining land in the house, the sum of those two tax bills is greater than it was for a house with 5 acres. And for that additional tax liability, they're receiving the benefit of having a recorded plan and current zoning. But if you allow them to do the A&R process and never file the plan, then they don't pay the additional tax revenue. And then someday, 10 years down the road, they can just file the thing and say, okay, now I'm good to go. That to me doesn't quite seem equitable.
But they haven't created the lot until it's been recorded. The recording of the plan is what creates the lot. And so they're not receiving any benefit from the A&R process until they record the lot. And furthermore, if they come through the A&R process tonight, they create that 1 acre lot, they divide it off, and they're like, you know what? I don't really want to sell it. I still live here. I don't want someone living that close to me. 5 years down the line, that's going to get folded right back into their lot, and they've paid taxes on a buildable lot for a period of time that they've seen no benefit of, and they then going to go back and redivide. So, we spent a lot of time at the first half of this talking about doing our best to provide information and protect our residents and citizens from their own efforts. It's the same thing here. If we force them to record it, they may have spent, $3,000 on an A&R, and then they're going to start paying taxes on a buildable lot that all may just go away because it just gets combined back together. Or they create a buildable lot, it's in common ownership, we change the zoning in 3 years, and all of a sudden, they don't have a buildable lot anymore. They just have a junky parcel that is sitting there. So, there's a lot of bits and pieces to this. We don't get anything from the A&R until it's recorded. Once it's recorded, then it's a new lot and it's on the roll. But whether someone records it in 10 days or 2 months or 5 years, that lot doesn't exist till it's recorded, and its zoning freeze only goes from the date of endorsement.
So I think that's what we've got to put in there. I think that's what we need to put a statement about the zoning freeze. I would like it in the A&R process. If we're trying to because you just said, if I understood you correctly, that it gets, after 5 years, they have to refile.
No, no, what I said is if you own lots in common ownership.
Yeah, they get folded back in by
the assessor can recombine them. They're not required to. And some do on a regular basis, some don't. But if they do that, then you lose, your A&R just kind of goes away. If we change the zoning and they're owned in common ownership, there's no pre-existing non-conforming at that point. You own them in common ownership, they essentially become one lot for zoning purposes.
So why don't we just add a statement that zoning protection is valid under an A&R process for 3 years? Can't we just put a statement in there?
We can, it's uncommon. That's statutory. That's in the general laws.
But then, so how do we track an A&R plan that was signed and then someone goes to record it and the zoning changes and they're 1 year beyond their time to have recorded? Who catches
We
that?
retain copies of the A&R and the Mylar is dated.
But so do we look at that regularly? As a town, when permits come in and the building official says, okay, is this a legal lot? If the assessors haven't recombined them, well, actually,
Yes,
they've split. They've never been split.
If it's never been split, then there's no way to apply for a building permit because you don't have a lot. But
They record, so the zoning changes.
they record it.
They've exceeded their 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Their A&R no longer complies with zoning. They go to the registry and say, I want to record this plan. Registry lets them do that.
Okay.
they now apply for a building permit. How do we catch that it was recorded after the zoning changed? Who looks at that?
Well, what would happen, and we've had a couple of cases like this recently. There was a case where a lot was divided in the 70s by a father, and he divided it into 2 lots and built a house on one, and one was vacant. He owned them in common ownership for maybe 2 years, and then gave each lot to one of his sons, something like that. And someone came and bought both of them and was like, okay, I'm going to tear this house down and build a new house, and I'm going to build another house over here. And in looking at the deed history, it was determined that they were that the lot that had the house on it, he could do something with because it's pre-existing non-conforming. The lot that was vacant, well, it's substandard, proved to me that it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. Go do deed research, bring it in, present it to me that it's never been owned in common ownership with either of the side parcels, and that it was created prior to the zoning change, which created the lot size that we now have. And in doing that, the property owner, it was determined that the lots were in common ownership and for zoning purposes were a single lot. And he ended up knocking the house down and building one house crossing both lots.
But who caught that and how long?
The building commissioner.
So that's, the building inspector would catch it?
Correct. It would be part of reviewing each lot that comes in for zoning compliance with construction of a new home.
Okay. I just see a lot of leeway to whether or not we catch it as having been recorded after the zoning.
When it's recorded is irrelevant. What happens is, this happens all the time. People come in and say, I have this lot, it doesn't meet your standards. Is it buildable? And there's a lot of research that goes in, both just within the building for what we have, and then requiring them to provide additional deed research from their attorney to prove that the lot is within the pre-existing non-conforming standards. I mean, there are communities out there that have changed their minimum lot size requirements exponentially more frequently than we have in Lunenburg, and they deal with this on a regular basis. It's not uncommon for us to see it, but it's not something that we're up to our eyeballs in all the time.
Chair, if I may, it just going through the list of, and I'm looking at draft 1, which I think they're both the same except for the 14 days, but looking at some of the stuff that's been crossed out, number 4, in the case of the creation of a new lot, the remaining land area and frontage of the land in the ownership of the applicant can be shown. I think that's relative information. Like, I mean, if we're looking at an A&R, don't we want to know what the square footage of the land is that remains to make sure that we're not creating a non-conforming situation? Number 5, notice of any ZBA decisions. I think that is pertinent. And then the list of abutters, I don't think that really applies, but names and status of private and public streets and ways shown on the plan. I mean, that's
Number 3, locations, names, lines, widths of all existing street sidewalks, publicly owned trails, and shared use paths in any common or public areas. So, I mean, some of these things are in there in a different form.
okay. Okay. But in terms of the ZBA stuff and the,
Yeah, and that's fine. The additional land,
okay.
And the zoning classification should be
Mhm.
added.
Yes.
So do we current, in the proposed regulation, do we specify that we want to see any ZBA decisions on the property?
It doesn't, but number 8 actually states the same as number 4. Dimensions of all lots created and all the dimensions and any frontage remaining on the original subdivided parcels, including area of any subdivided parcels with a structure.
And why are we saying suitable space to record the action rather than specifying the location? I like having all the plans the same with the signature block in one place. Why are we eliminating that? I don't want to have to look at the top of one plan, the bottom, the left on one, the right on one. I think I like having to be able, when we have a whole stack of them just going through. So I'd like to go back to the way it was written, specifying where the signature block needed to be.
Experience, I can tell you that that's not always as easy as it may look.
Yeah, but historically, we've always had them in one place. I mean, I don't know of any plans, A&Rs that we've signed that the signature block hasn't been in the lower right-hand corner because we required it.
No, it was only a month. Oh, it wasn't an A&R, never mind, sorry.
No, an A&R I'm talking about.
Well, A&Rs typically just one sheet, typically.
Yeah, but I definitely know that we've had a whole bunch of them during the night and we sign them at the end of the meeting.
Yep.
And I like being able to just flip. So.
I don't disagree, but.
That's fine. I mean, I can take 2 and make it 9.
It was a requirement we had and we're eliminating that requirement. And we haven't had people complain about complying with it.
It wasn't always enforced either, so, I mean.
We've had plenty of people complain about complying with it.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. So you're going to be able to distribute a finalized draft before we advertise for the.
Yeah, I'll have it. It'll be in your meeting packet for next meeting.
Awesome.
So Matt, you raised the question about contours. If you look at number 10 on the draft that's crossed out, I don't know if this answers your question or not, but it says existing contours at 2-foot intervals and the location of any topographic features which interfere with the use of frontage for access. What if we just put that back in? If we put that back in, does that address your concerns?
Well, it does, because those were two valid reasons to deny an A&R. One was not accessible, and another one was a permanent blockage, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Something permanent that, I don't know, like a ledge outcrop or something.
Like a cliff, yeah.
And again, I mean, depending on, to get back to an earlier point, land, the developable land has already been developed. We're only going to see stuff getting worse and worse and worse. And with the housing market the way it may be, and the affluence of the people who seem to be coming to Lunenburg, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be more doable. So, I mean, if you've got a rock face, it may not be not in their best interest to blast it and make access. So, I mean, but that's it's very, very small percentage. It does. It mentions 2-foot contours too.
Yeah, so I think we just put that.
Yeah, I'll just pull that back
We
in.
don't take it out. We don't take it out.
Matt, were you saying that you preferred the 1-foot contours though, and you felt that was a better choice?
I always do, but it sometimes looks scary.
Yeah, I personally am looking at plans. I like the 2-foot because when you do 1 foot, gets really, really tight.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it's just important to be aware of it, basically. And Adam, I think you wrote down bar scale. It doesn't have to be bar scale. Graphic scale, I think, is the proper term. But I mean, I'm not sure what graphic scales would not be a bar scale. But just something to you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. How do we feel about this?
I think once we get the other draft, we'll have a better handle on everything.
I'm going to take out all the strikeouts on the next draft, so please hold on to the ones you have.
Okay.
Okay.
Just because it's going to be easier to look at as
a document, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good idea.
Well, wait a minute. So what are you saying, Adam? You're not going to show the changes on the next one?
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and accept all the changes on this document. And then I'm going to make the changes we talked about tonight. So those will show as changes, but all the changes that were all the strikeouts on the document you have tonight will not be on the next one.
So we'll be able to compare the new draft to the existing verbiage and
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So all the stuff that gets that is shown as deleted on here tonight will actually be deleted.
Oh, see, I'm not good with that.
But that's only on the draft.
It's only
I know that, but now you're going to have to take two documents and go back and forth and compare them. Why would you not just go back to the original, accept some of the changes and the things we've talked about, not accept? So, for example, putting back the 2-4.
Those are going to show as new changes. So I'm going to accept all the deletions, and then I'm going to put things back in, and they'll show as highlighted as new.
I'm not following why you would do that. If you're accepting all the deletions, you're accepting that we've changed it. So now we've got to go back and compare the existing to the new.
But I'm going to do that before I make the changes to the text that's there as new text.
Okay.
So you won't have, so when I take number 5 about the ZBA, that's not going to show up twice. It's only going to show up once as an underlined new insertion.
Yeah, see, and I don't understand why we would do that, because it's not a new insertion. It's existing in our current regulations. So it's
Because
not.
what it's going to do is it's going to highlight that that's changed from what I submitted to you tonight.
Okay. And that's where I have a problem. I don't know why we would accept the things that I don't know why we would just eliminate, not accept those changes, go back to what is existing. So we have one document that now shows the changes. Otherwise, we're going to have to compare the two documents side by side. So, because number 5, if you show it as a new insertion, it's not a new insertion. It's existing in our current regulations.
Correct, but if by moving it around into the document, moving it around in the document is going to create a series of formats, and it's going to muddy up the document with all of the little bits that you do to move it.
So we're going to have to physically compare these two hard copies to each other to determine what changes are being made to the bylaw.
Well, yes and no.
I don't know how we say that.
I mean, I can leave it all in there. I just think it's messy. I don't think that I don't think it's clear, and I don't think that it shows the evolution from draft 1 to draft 2.
But what I don't think is clear is what's changed. If we do it the way you're proposing, we're not going to be able to see how the bylaw is changing. Because number 5 is not, number 5, which is currently struck through, is not a new insertion. But yet number 5 in the, that is not struck through, that you see it before, is a new insertion. So how are we going to know what currently exists in the bylaw and what doesn't? Right now, on this copy, we can see that.
Yeah, but I guess you just spent 45 minutes talking about it, and my impression was, outside of the things that were mentioned, the bar scale, the zoning district, the potable water supply, the zoning board stuff and the contours, none of the other stuff that was being struck you felt you needed to keep.
Okay, and I guess that's my question. Is
So
okay.
what's being retained is what will be highlighted.
Okay, but I guess that's my question. So we'll now have, so the only thing, so we have now, your impression is we are all okay with these changes as proposed, except for the specific things that we've talked about. And I don't, I'm there. And I guess that's my point.
Then that's a different issue then.
Okay, so is everyone else feel comfortable with all of the changes Adam has proposed, except for the specific things we've talked about? Because by doing it the way Adam is proposing, we will no longer see what's exactly changing. We will have accepted these changes.
I'm comfortable with it because then if I keep reading and change my mind, we can still amend it and say, actually, or edit it rather, and say, no, actually, if we go back 2 versions, there was this wording that I think was important. Can we add that back in? I think part of what we're looking at here is just some of the realistic limits of how the software parses changes and how it displays that.
So everyone else is okay with the changes that Adam's proposed, except for the specific things we talked about.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I'm okay with the changes. I just don't know if I'm okay with the fact that we've got to do the comparison back and forth, because it basically puts us at the mercy of the new document being exactly as we intended. And I don't, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of new on here, and I feel like a simple oversight, miss one line between the document we have today and what we're going to get at the next meeting, and it's substantially different. So, I mean, I share the same concerns, but I'm willing to go through word by word and compare 2 documents if it makes it easier to format it. But
I was actually thinking of the ease of looking at it. You know, more strike through makes it more confusing in my opinion, but if you want me to just jam it all in there, I can do that.
It won't be, I don't understand why you're saying it would be more strike through. When you say, when you've deleted number 5, believe me, I edit documents and have written 200-page plans. You just don't accept that change.
But
you save it as version 3, and when you go, and so you just save it as a new file name, and number 5, which you struck through, you just highlight it and say, don't accept this change.
But it's not going to be number 5 because there's a new numbered list. So it's not just not accepting that change, it's integrating that into the new list.
Okay, but that will change if you're concerned about numbering. That's the
No, I'm not concerned about numbering at all. What I'm saying is that even if I save it as a new document and I continue to track changes, it's not going to show the updates from version 1 to version 2. It's all going to be one series of either underlined or struck through. It's not going to show this is what was part of version 1, this is what's part of version 2. And that's fine. If that's how the board wants to read it, I can do it that way, and it's it's just as easy. It's just not stylistically the way that I would think and logically follow along. But if that's how the board wants it, that's how I'll do it.
I'm flexible. I honestly, I try to take every change we make to the bylaws and compare it to what is actually in what our current one is. And I try to do it digitally so I can search for words. Changes aren't easy. Some people are more resistant than others. I tend to be a little bit more resistant. And I can see both sides of this discussion. I kind of like to have one new document and one old document to compare. And then at the same time, it would be nice, and I do keep these old versions of them so that I do have the different drafts to track. If we want to change the process, then that's fine with me.
If everybody's comfortable doing it that way, I just want to point out to everybody that you're going to have to physically look at the two documents to see what's been changed. If that's the route everyone wants to go, that's fine.
I just want to mention we've lost Eric.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly, I don't understand why you wouldn't take the line out and change the number, and the only thing that would be new is the number.
I'll submit something that will cover everyone's concern. I think that we're well into the weeds on document editing at 20 after 10.
Okay, very good. If this is going to take you 2 hours more, then I would.
No, it's not at all.
Okay, all right, very much appreciated. And if we ever do ask you something that's going to take you a phenomenal amount of time, will you please tell us?
No.
Why not? That was a joke, right?
Yes. If it's really onerous, I will not be shy to say something.
Okay, good. All right, so we have 12 more minutes before we have to vote to extend the meeting.
And we've lost 50% of the purpose of this second item anyway. This was in response to the last meeting when we talked about the new members having not had input and participated in the discussion on which sections of the master plan to update.
Yeah. So
the board, previously had voted to update the public services and facilities and land use chapters, in addition to the population study. So it was more in response to the board saying, let's just have a look at that and make sure everybody's still on board with it. And with Eric either falling asleep or deciding he'd had enough.
Or his phone charge died. Yeah, I have no problem putting that off till next meeting. Our meeting schedule, we've got Bright Farms probably on both dates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are they the only ones so far?
So far.
Public comment. There's no public, which typically means there's no public comment. Board comments and concerns. Community kitchen. I wrote it down. What was I going to say about it? I don't remember. It was probably something about the grant. Anybody else got any board comments, concerns? All right, speak now or wait until September 28th. I would accept a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
At 10:21, the motion was made to adjourn. No discussion about adjourning. All in favor, roll call. Mr. Cole.
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram.
Aye.
Brenner.
Aye.
And we lost Mr. Torgerson about 15 minutes ago, so we are adjourned at 10:21. Marjorie, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.